Showtime! Showtime! Hey.
What's going on?
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everyone. Oh boy, that was loud. Hold on. Sorry about that. Let me readjust the volume. There we go. All right. I don't know if I'm chipmunking right now, but Jesus Christ, hold on. I don't have another stream running right now because, boy, today, holy crap. We're just gonna go through really quick and then go through the video. So, hi. My name is Side Pocket. I'm one of the two co-founders of DCG 201, formerly known as DEFCON 201 or DC 201, as my other co-founder arrives back here. We both have co-founded DCG 201. Thank you so much. Which is part of DEFCON groups. That's many groups across the nation and the world. We normally meet third Friday of the month, which is why we're meeting on here, and we were supposed to meet in person as well, but basically so far everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in terms of in-person stuff. We're going to explain after we do this pre-show, so we just kind of want to get into this, but if you want to know more about us, you can go to our website that's listed here at defcon21.org. I also post the link in the chat. We are also all of our social media, such as our huge Twitter on DEFCON21NJ or just DEFCON201 on Instagram, GitHub, the whole stuff, social instance of Mastodon, our own Onion site, all of that. And if you want a whole master list of where you can contact us and also watch our streams, we'll just post a Linktree chat in there. If you are watching on Facebook for some god-awful reason, we do have, and I just remembered something, we do have, you can chat with us, but Facebook doesn't like to play well with many things, including restreams, so we're just going to send the link right now, and that will be, that's how you can chat with us on Facebook. Also, we already got a follow on DLive. I don't know who followed us, but we are one follow away from reaching over 100 followers, which means we get to do a lot more with the DLive account. So if you like what you see, you can subscribe, follow, and free on Twitch, DLive, or YouTube. We get notifications for those, and we cheer everybody on. I'm going to also explain why I'm wearing this mask at the moment. That's kind of a hint. So what are we doing here? So we get notifications for those. It's completely free. Also lets you know when we've appeared on the live stream. And if you're especially on DLive, and thank you. Oh God, is Thurman on here? Does Thurman have a new account, or is this a new Thurman? Hi Thurman J. Thank you for following us. But if you're not the Thurman I'm thinking of, like, yay. If you are, yay. But still, it's just funny. So we are also on a bunch of different things, including the awesome Diode Zone, and again on Facebook. And I post the link where you can follow. So enough rambling. We actually have a lot of content just for online alone, and originally it's supposed to be a hybrid, so it's supposed to be exclusivities of both, but screw that, we're all going to be online. So we're going to go switch over, and I'm actually going to do that right now. And we're going to see the our little pre-show here, which if you were at DEFCON 29, which was also a hybrid event and went a lot smoother than currently ours, they had their own badge, and they had new people designing the badge this year, an amazing couple. And so here is the talk that was given at DEFCON 29 about how they created this new awesome badge that, basically is updated to allow, social distancing and just cool hacker stuff. So enjoy, and then we'll get some updates, and then we're going to go right into the main talks and content. And I just let you know, at around 7 p.m. on meetup.com and Twitter, we're going to post the SEMF call link so anyone can join. Just stay tuned for that. So without further ado, let's find out how they made the awesome badge at DEFCON 29. See you in a bit.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of Between Two Printers. My name's Katie, and today we'll be talking with this year's DEF CON badge makers, MK Factor. Hello, Michael. Thank you for being here.
Glad to be here.
To my knowledge, we're filming this before the badge is completely done, yes?
Yes, about 3 weeks before DEF CON.
All right, so we can't be able to answer all of the questions, but we're going to try to do our best. So tell us a little bit about MK Factor.
So MK Factor is our badge team, and I'm the M in MK Factor. I do a lot of the circuit board design and the code.
So what about the K in MK Factor? Oh, wait. That's me. I do graphic design and assembly. In February this year, DEF CON did something they've never done before. They have put out a call for badge makers. So what made you decide to apply?
So we've made a lot of badges for different conferences, and we've joked in the past about wouldn't it be cool to do the DEF CON badge someday, and this was our chance, so we took it.
All right, and that process was definitely an emotional roller coaster.
Yes, it was.
Between the calls and each stage of the process was nerve-wracking.
Yeah, it took about a month for DEF CON to decide which team they wanted to do their badge. And special shout out to Zevlag and Professor Plum for giving us some encouragement throughout this.
We needed it.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when we were awarded the badge, how did you feel?
Scared? It's a big thing.
Yeah, kind of just sat there in shock. But it was the end of March, and that gave us 4 months to finish, and so we had to get our butts in gear.
Yeah.
We had quite a few snags while producing this badge. Do you want to name a few?
Yeah, so a lot of supply chain issues this year. For those who aren't aware, there's a worldwide chip shortage, which is all kinds of fun. So our main microcontroller, we changed 3 or 4 times. We would pick one that was available that fit our needs and design a board around it, send out for prototypes, and before we even got them back, someone would buy all those chips. So in the end, we just decided to pick a chip that we figured would work for us and buy as many as we needed without even testing.
Yeah, we felt kind of like anyone who's trying to buy a house right now. Super great. All right, so also another snag we had was keycaps. We had chosen which ones we wanted, and we found a supplier, and when it came time to order, they disappeared. So we had a big decision to be made. Either change the keycap what we wanted, or print our own and make what we wanted. So as you can tell, we chose to make our own. This way we were able to do our own personal designs and to be able to put DEF CON right onto the keycaps. So we have about 7 printers going all the time printing keycaps. It's great fun. All right, we also have put together a little film of the process of making this badge.
Roll the video.
Hey, welcome to the making of the DEF CON 29 badge. All right, let's get started. Oh, so pretty. Love all the colors together.
Yeah, so this is all the DEF CON badges minus the Uber.
That one we're keeping a secret for now.
Yep. So this is going to be about how we got here, how we made all these, the process, everything. First, let's talk about the badge you've got. So this is a human badge. Obviously 4 keys, right? They are mechanical keyboard keys. And they're blues because they're clicky and awesome. On the right side, under the signal bars here is a touch slider, and the default for that is controlling volume on your computer. The other ones are set as some defaults for controlling Discord, but it's all changeable. You can modify it to be whatever you want. When you plug it into your computer, it will show up as a keyboard as well as a virtual COM port. So you can connect to it with any serial terminal and change settings, change the keys, all that good stuff.
In the booklet, you'll find some pre-made legends for you guys can use. They're to the size of the actual keycaps.
Yep. And the keycaps are in 2 parts, so they do pop open. So hopefully you can kind of see that a little bit. They are 2, there's a little cap on there you can pop off and then put a little piece of paper in there.
Here are they separated, and they just click back on.
Yep. So as well as being a programmable keypad, there are some interactive things. Connect to your fellow attendees over the USB cable. So let's talk about that real quick. So the lanyard looks like this for the people in person. And on this end pops out, and it is a USB-C cable so that you can connect it to your computer. But also the badges have USB-C and USB-A ports on them. So you can connect between badges. You can plug there, plug this into someone else's badge, and we've got some games and other fun things you can do, as well as some challenges built in there.
All good fun.
All right, so for those of you who got virtual badges, your badges came without final code on them. We did that on purpose because there are challenges and all kinds of stuff associated with the badge, and we didn't want you guys to have a 2-week lead time on everyone else. That's not very fair.
Spoilers.
So you guys have very basic code where you can change the keys and stuff like that, but not much else. So to reprogram your badge, normally when you turn it on, all the lights light up and everything. If you hold this bottom right button when you turn it on, it will go into a bootloader mode. And when you connect it to your computer, it will show up as a flash drive. And then you can just drag and drop the new firmware file onto it, and it'll reprogram it. Right. So we kind of talked about this a little bit already, but we didn't have a lot of time to design this badge. About 4 months, and right before we knew we were going to do this, we had planned a trip to see some family across country. So
we drove cross country. And this is Michael sitting there figuring out which microcontroller we wanted to use.
Yeah, sitting in my mother-in-law's house with a laptop and an extra screen trying to design a badge.
Going through schematics, figuring out if it's going to work. And then I think we looked at 2 different microcontrollers while we were there.
Yeah.
And both were bought out before we could get them.
Yep.
It was great. Super great.
So these are some of the early concept designs.
Yeah, we early on wanted something that would connect together, and so we first originally thought, oh, we'll make a circle, right? But that's done previously before, and then we had the idea of Qbert and do a tessellating thing. Mm-hmm. So that's how we ended up with our design that we've chosen.
So this was our first prototype. And there's Katie soldering it together.
And no burns, so I think that's a win. Yeah, we were excited to see the tessellating happening.
So this one on the right was our second prototype. And here a little sneak preview of the Uber sketches and things we were working on with that. All right, let's talk about keycaps in these printers. So,
our army of printers.
Yeah, how we got there. So we mentioned a little bit before, we had a vendor who flaked on us about 2 months ago, which didn't leave us with a lot of time to come up with other options. I reached out to a couple dozen different companies that could make keycaps, and the story was either they couldn't do them in time or they couldn't do them in anything that was translucent, or they wanted crazy amounts of money for them. So in the end, we decided to print our own. So we bought one printer.
To see if we could work.
Yep, just to try it out. And we figured out what did and didn't work. See lots of different types of keycap designs we went through.
The green stuff doesn't work on cleaning them well.
Yeah, that doesn't clean
it
them well
stains
at all.
them.
Yeah.
Super cool.
Yep.
Especially if you want clear ones.
Yeah. So in the end, it worked. We bought 7 printers total.
And we named them all because then we could have something to yell at when they were not cooperating. We named all of our compute, like all the printers, and then we also named the vats that hold the resin in them. So that way we know which vats were broken and easier for communication. So all of our vats, we originally had 7. So of course we went with 7 dwarfs. And then we ended up getting 2 more printers, and that meant 2 more vats. So we went with Prince Charming and Snow White. And then our printers' names are...
So we got 7 and Kit, Steve, Kaylee, Kevin, Dave, and Jarvis.
Yep. So if you want to know more about that, hit us up. We'll explain why we chose some of the names. Some I feel like are a little explanatory. So
yeah. So another thing with the keycaps, we got to customize them. So every keycap has DEF CON embedded in it, right on the front of the keycap. So that's something we wouldn't have been able to do with any other manufacturer. One of the other big pluses to this is about a month ago, Dark Tangent came to us and said, hey, we're going to run out of badges before DEF CON starts. What do we do? And the keycaps being one of the main pieces meant that we were producing them ourselves, so making more wasn't a huge problem. Whereas if they were being made by someone else, we would have been up a creek.
Yep. So that's when we bought the second 2, the 6 and 7 printer. Yep. So Dave and Jarvis.
Yep. So this is what the keycaps look like right off the printer. You can see there's one missing here. So that one didn't print properly, which is a pain in the butt because then you got to clean off the bottom of the vat.
So many times.
So what we do then is this is a removable metal plate here that's on a magnetic sheet. So we pull that off and put a new one on and set it to print again. And then this is our cleaning station.
Oh, so fun. So we got each vat, like bucket, is filled with alcohol. We have our first bucket, which is the primary rinse, where it gets a lot of more resin into it.
Yep.
So lets it soak there, help it release from the metal plate. Then we got a magnetic stir on the bottom of our second bucket, and it's a lot more cleaner, so that way it gives it an extra wash. Mm-hmm. And then we will put it in a cup and fill it with alcohol, which is from our third bucket, which has a filter to help keep it clean the whole time, and then we'll cure it. That's the word I'm looking for.
Yep, so this is the curing station, and then put them out on a drying rack. We got a fan here running to dry them off.
There are fans everywhere. Ventilation is key when you're dealing with this much alcohol.
Yeah, big fan on the window. Is the smell of the alcohol and the resin in here is not great. And we're even using the plant-based eco resin. It's not as smelly, and it's still a lot.
It smells so bad. We originally were curing in water, but that meant we had to completely dry our keycaps from the second wash of the alcohol. Otherwise, it reacted funny and would make it would make them turn white instead of clear.
Yeah.
And then we had the realization, well, alcohol is clear like water. So we we figured out how to reuse the water so that it wouldn't have all the particles, or reuse the alcohol so it didn't have any of the extra particles of cured resin.
Yep.
And that's worked brilliantly. It sped up the process so much more.
Yeah.
So it's been fun. A lot of learning.
Yeah. So with all that isopropyl alcohol, we use a lot of it to clean these parts, and it's expensive in large quantities. So we created a device to clean the alcohol. So
my inner Hawkeye is really proud.
So what we do is we take the dirty bucket of resin and alcohol mix. It gets pretty cloudy and nasty after a while. And we put it in this pot, and then this bucket is full of water, and we use our sous vide cooker to bring it up to the proper temperature at which the alcohol will boil. Come through here. This one's full of water, and it's got a coil of the coiled copper tube, and that cools the steam, and then it collects in this bucket, and then we've got nice, fresh, clean alcohol.
Which you can see behind us. We have a fresh thing of it right now.
Yep. So we can reclaim about 75% of the alcohol that we use, which helps a ton.
In cost and time, because running to the store to get the alcohol, that takes time, and then you end up buying snacks, so that also takes money. So this saves us time and money.
Yeah. So this in the middle, this is what's left after most of the alcohol boils off. The resin tends to congeal into this nasty stuff.
Yummy.
Yeah, which we then scoop out and then set it outside for it to dry. And that also cures the resin so that it can be thrown away safely. Speaking of resin, here's some mostly empty bottles. So once we've dumped everything out that we can, we leave them upside down for a few days so that everything collects in the bottom, and then we can pour it all back into one bottle so we don't waste any.
Yep. It's lots of fun just sitting there holding the bottles over each other. Super great. But it's amazing how much you'll actually get out from doing that, and so that helps with cost as well.
Yeah, especially with how much resin we're using. We're making 54,000 keycaps and using,
so many.
I think we've bought 80 bottles of resin.
And not
It's
like
a
the
lot.
little bottles.
The big 1 liter bottles. Yeah. It's a crazy amount.
But we're almost there.
Yeah. And of course, our kids have been helping. They love to help and play with the 3D printers and help us assemble badges. And
it's like Christmas all the time. We have packages showing up all the time.
All right.
So pretty.
Assembly. So these panels on the left, these are actually the first panels we got from our assembly house. This is how they come to us, and so we've got to break them apart, break off the rails on the sides, break them apart, and then break off all these little tabs in between that hold them together. So
we don't have any flesh left on our fingertips anymore. Yeah. It's fine.
So one of the things we ran into with the first boards is these little spring contacts here. There's 3 on each board, and they connect to the touch slider on the top. And if you notice, these ones up here are a little bit shorter. They were damaged in shipping. So what happened is the panels sitting on top of each other, squishing against each other and rubbing around during shipping, squished those enough to permanently compress them. So they're too short to work anymore. So we worked with our assembly house, and they came up with a really awesome way to ship these boards to us without them getting damaged.
Thank you so much. Yeah. We truly greatly appreciate all you do to keep them safe for travel. We really, really appreciate it.
Yeah. This connector up here is a little wonky. So another thing they did is add some little epoxy glue dots underneath these connectors to keep them down, because we've got 2-sided assembly. So we do all this stuff on the top, and then they flip over the boards and run all the bottom parts. And so these ones were so heavy they were starting to fall out a little. And I also want to give a shout out to PCBX, who did our assembly. They have been amazing to work with. They've been able to fix things and change processes to make things work better. And having done overseas assembly, it's really, really nice to have someone in the States who I can actually talk to, and they respond within minutes rather than half a day. And there's no language barrier. It's really, really nice to have someone in the States that's local and knows what they're doing.
And he's very upfront with what he wants and what he needs, and we are really grateful to them.
Yeah.
A lot of work.
Yeah. And these edge connectors were another fun thing we found out too late. So even though we followed the manufacturer footprint exactly, what was happening is the surface tension of the solder on these pads and the ones underneath were pushing these off the edge of the board just enough to where this little lip falls down off the front, and so the connectors are angled down just a little bit, which it doesn't really matter. They work just fine. It's just not perfect.
We don't have OCD issues. It's fine.
And this is one of those things where if we had more time, we would have run some test boards and panels ahead of time. But with such a short schedule, we didn't have that option. So they're all like this, but they work, and it's just fine.
I'm pretty happy.
Yeah.
They're done.
Yeah. So all the assembly is happening in our little house.
Welcome to my mess.
So this is a bucket of boards that have the tops put on them, and they've been programmed. They're waiting to get all the key switches and keycaps on them.
All our bubble wrap that we have from protecting the boards.
Yep.
Shows how much he cares for the boards as much as us.
Yeah. So here's our
late night programming sessions.
Yeah. Yeah, this was a very long night. So yeah, you can see our programming stations, piles of boards ready to have their tops put on them. So one thing in here with those little spring contacts, because they're so fragile, we go immediately separate the panels, program them, get them over here, put the tops on them, then they can go in buckets and go through the rest of the process.
A lot safer.
But until they've got that top board on them, it's really easy to break them.
Yeah.
Some more pictures, me programming badges. So these test jigs have actually worked really well. So
they put up with some abuse.
Yeah. So we've got the normal, pogo pins here, and then 4 brass pins to locate the badges on there. So we can just shove it down on there. These over here are some little, they go in the side connectors to test those. So as you push the board down, those rotate down into place and push those connectors in. To program them, we're using these little Atmel dev boards, and we kind of hijacked the internal debug stuff. So normally it's connected between the debug chip and the main microcontroller on that board, but we needed to get that off the board. So the board has this little connector for connecting an external, fancier debugger to this board, to the chip. We basically cut the lines between the chip on there and the internal debug stuff, and added a little switch so I can switch it back and forth, and then connect that debug connector out to our test jig to program our boards.
Kind of Frankensteined it. It's fine.
Not the way it's meant to be used, but it works really well. And these dev boards are pretty cheap compared to production style programmers.
And they do pretty good. They've handled the workload so far, which is really nice.
Yeah. Some of our family helping.
So to get our first batch out, we called the troops in. Mm-hmm. Helps that he's the oldest of 8. So, yay, big families.
Yeah, we spent a crazy weekend getting all the first batch of virtual badges out.
You're welcome.
It was nuts.
A little more of the family.
Yep.
It was definitely not quiet.
Yeah. All right, so we kind of talked about the lanyards a little bit. They're really awesome, and they came individually packaged, which we were not
awesome.
Yeah, we were not expecting that, so that's amazing.
Yeah.
Yep. So we alternate between these two things.
Constantly. You may have seen me yawn when Not meaning to, but that's where we're at this point.
Yeah, so much.
So, as many badge makers know, it's the never-ending project.
Yeah.
And who else did not sing it? Because I sing it every time I see it.
Yeah, this project, we're in this 3 months now, and it feels like it'll never end. But by the time you guys see this, it'll be done.
And we'll feel more like this.
Yeah, if you see us at the con like this, you know why.
Don't ask why we're crying. Just be like, it's okay.
Oh,
Give us candy and say we're pretty.
This has been a heck of a project, but it's been good, and I'm excited to do it and to be done.
Yeah, we hope you enjoy, and thank you for letting us be your badge makers this year.
Yeah.
Welcome back. That looked like a lot of work, Michael.
It definitely is.
Well, I would like to thank MK Factor for being here and taking time out of their busy schedule to talk with us.
Thank you for having us.
So join us next time on Between Two Printers, where we will talk about the different ways of decompressing after making a DEF CON badge. See you next time.
Bye-bye.
Yay! That was pretty in depth and awesome. It's always nice to see a project starting from scratch where there's a lot of struggle and achievement, and you know, everyone's always used to seeing an end product and result, but then like to finally see all that hard work pay off. Hold on. Okay, just making sure everyone can hear me. I'm gonna raise the volume a bit on my end. There we go. I think you'll be able to hear me better. All right. So, oh, that's a little too loud. There we go. So, let's get into the meat and potatoes of everything. So, this is going to be odd because I'm going to actually have to do, like, screen share on this. So you're going to see, like, something flipping back and forth. So you're going to be seeing, like, bits of behind the scenes of here. Because we're going to do the DCG 201 announcement stuff later after the second video that we're going to air. But we're going to get right into the main speaker here. So I'm going to turn on the display capture. This is going to get weird. Here we go. Extreme close-up. Whoa! All right. So, this is our main website. As you can see, we had to change some updates because this will now be all virtual. We will explain that after the main talk. What we're going to look into now is the Hyper Protocol platform. It originally started off as that, and both it and Hyper Protocol was popularized by the Beaker browser, which was built in conjunction with it. So I've been wanting this talk for forever. We just had to figure out how to fit it in our schedule. Excuse me, sneeze is coming. Apologies. So without further ado, we're gonna flip back, and here is Paul to talk about his work on the Hypercore protocol and how it's built and the future of it, which looks really interesting from what he's told me. So here we go. I'm gonna unmute. Paul, whenever you're ready, you can completely take it away.
So I think my face should show up, and now we should see my slides. Okay. Yeah, I noticed that. I actually have to do the specific window. The whole screen gets wonky. All right, looking good? Great. All right. Well, hello, everybody. Thank you all for coming and hearing me talk here. There's a number of things that I'm going to kind of leave as a prompt for Q&A after, so there'll be plenty of time to ask me any questions afterwards, and feel free to do so. Name of my talk is The Hypercore Protocol, a Pixar Story, and I'll explain why it's called that in just a second. But first, a little bit about who I am. So again, my name is Paul Frazee. You can find me on Twitter at pfrazee. I have done lots of peer-to-peer work over the past 8 to 10 years. I created the Beaker browser, which you can find at beakerbrowser.com. I am part of the core team, not in the actual software development, but in the kind of managerial and marketing side of the Hypercore protocol, which is part of why I'm here talking about today. I was one of the original team of Secure Scuttlebutt, which if you heard about that, that's a peer-to-peer social networking protocol, which is still very active. I was number 2 in that project back when that first got started. And my current project is called ATEC Cloud, and I'll give a short little plug for what that is at the end of the talk. But for today, we're going to be talking about the Hypercore protocol. So for the agenda on this talk, I'm going to explain why does Hypercore exist, give some context on what it's doing. I'm going to explain how it works, including the aspect of the append-only logs and then how you're able to build databases on top of those logs. And then I'll give a quick explainer on how we use it. I understand that part of the reason I was brought for this talk is because of the work on Beaker browser. And I'm not going to talk about Beaker on this talk because unfortunately Beaker is somewhat being retired at this stage. And like I said in the Q&A, it'd be a good time for me to talk about why that's happening and where I'm going instead. But the technology that Beaker was built on, which is the Hypercore protocol, is still alive and kicking, and that's why I figured it'd be a good idea to talk about that. So let's get into the talk. Now, why is my talk called a Pixar Story? A couple of, about a week and a half ago, I was telling my dad, who's a doctor, I was telling him I have a talk coming up. And he's a doctor, I'm a programmer. We don't usually have a lot of professional stuff in common, but this is one thing that we actually do have in common. He has to give talks quite frequently, and so he was kind of excited about that and started sharing some advice. And it made me laugh because a lot of the advice he gave was the exact same kind of stuff that you hear as a programmer giving talks. So whoever we're talking to, everybody's talking to the same folks about talk advice. And the thing he said was, make sure you tell a story. That's the thing that helps everybody remember, going away, is if you tell a good story. So then a couple of days later, I saw this post talking about, if you're pitching your startup, you should steal from the Pixar formula. And they put that up and it looks like this. And the idea was to be inspired with your pitch by this. So, structure it like a story. Once upon a time, you set the context every day in that world until one day, and because of this, and finally, right? So they're trying to give you a good way to kind of think about how to structure storytelling in the form of a pitch. And they meant for this to be just like inspiration. You're not supposed to actually give the Pixar story, but because I'm kind of a sarcastic jerk, I figured, it'd be funny to actually give the Pixar story directly using their formula for our talk. So that's what I'm going to do. Everybody says tell a story, so we're telling a story inspired by Pixar. So here is our story. Once upon a time, you had cloud computing, right? That's the context of our world. Every day, people use the cloud for everything. Until one day, the Hypercore protocol was born, and because of this, we can create secure peer-to-peer connections, and because of this, we can distribute data at usable scales, until finally, we can build usable peer-to-peer applications. So we're going to go through each of these sections here. This is kind of the structure of our talk. And again, the main kind of part of this talk is the why. So let's talk about the why, the once upon a time of cloud computing. So cloud computing, pros and cons. The server client architecture is an incredibly simple design for building software. Most people can kind of wrap their heads around how to build server client software pretty quickly. So that's a pro in cloud computing favor. It scales really well. You could start with a single VM and get your thing launched, and then if you start to need to scale up, you can switch to thousands of VMs without necessarily having to change the details of the architecture. It's not like the client-server design is going to break on you. You're going to have to do some back-end re-engineering, but by and large, it's not terribly difficult, all told, to scale up cloud computing, so that's a point in its favor. It's managed and reliable, so here you are on your laptop, and you don't know what's going on. You don't even have to care. It's just being handled for you by the engineers working in the cloud. Very convenient for the end user. And it's very profitable for the people that are running those services. Another way to put that is that there's just a really clear business model to running applications when you're doing cloud computing or SaaS, software as a service. So these are all really pretty good things about cloud computing, and it's a good idea to be honest about what's good about what we're kind of trying to compete with here. Now, here are some of the negatives of cloud computing. The first is that it could shut down and take all your data with you. That's always a risk whenever you're using a SaaS product. If they decide that they can't maintain it anymore, you really don't have any say about that. They're just going to shut down and go. They may open source the software, but you can't deploy it. It's a bad deal on that. Very bad privacy on cloud computing, of course. It's pretty rare that you have end-to-end privacy from cloud computing service, so they usually can see what you're doing and will sometimes mine your data in ways that are pretty creepy. There's very limited flexibility in cloud computing. You can't, change the code that somebody else is running. I can't change Facebook or Twitter or anything like that. And pretty rarely it's pretty rare that they integrate with other pieces of software in the cloud. So unlike, we expect out of computers, there's very little composition, very little programmability. It's a rock that you're being handed. And then for the people that are running the thing, it's actually pretty costly to maintain because you're having to pay for the computing resources for every one of your users. If you think about building a desktop application, you install that on the user's computer, they run it themselves. You're not having to pay for every user. But if you're doing something that's client server, you're having to pay for every user that comes on, which makes it pretty expensive as a software developer to put software out into the world. So that's cloud computing, the pros and cons of it. Now let's talk about how everybody uses the cloud for literally everything. Sometimes this is a good thing. In some cases, it makes a lot of sense to be using the cloud, such as very large-scale applications where you have a lot of data processing, a lot of bandwidth coming in and out. Something like Google, where you're trying to crawl the internet, World of Warcraft, where you have thousands or millions of players, Netflix, tons of bandwidth. That makes sense in that case, right? I don't have any problem with client server in that design. Things that are services or e-stores where the purpose of your product is to talk to the organization that is running the thing makes a lot of sense. Like if I'm making a posting on Craigslist or if I'm trying to buy something from Amazon, I need to consult their inventory to get that thing delivered. And you could come up with decentralized alternatives to these, but if you have an organization that is a traditional company and I need to talk to it, makes sense to be using a client server architecture where the server represents your service. So I don't really have a major problem with the cloud being used there. Where I start to get a little bit iffy for me is things like social applications, primarily where you're trying to communicate or share media. That's where I start to worry about the privacy of the thing because we're talking about interpersonal communication. I start to get annoyed by the lack of flexibility because I can't make changes, and this is my kind of daily driver software. I'd like to be able to hack on it. You start to have to worry about the influence on visibility of information and algorithms. You have to worry about censorship, all these kinds of things that we talk about all the time these days start to come into play. So social applications in the cloud start to get a little bit iffy. Where I think it's particularly poor fit is things like the Internet of Things or VR, AR. You're going to have sensors in your home. You're going to be trying to automate your home. You're tracking individuals. When you get into VR and AR, especially, you're going to be mapping out physical space and kind of tracking your, where you're looking throughout that physical space. That's all kind of information that I just don't want leaving my home. That seems pretty dangerous to let that kind of stuff get leaked out in mass. So I would consider the cloud to be an extremely poor fit for a lot of physical devices that you expect to be running in your living environment. And then finally, for consumer-free and open source software, the cloud just does not work at all. This is something like, if you think about applications like Audacity, open source applications that you can install on your computer and just run, no problem, that works great. But if there's a cloud component to it where the end user is a consumer, they're not technical, and they need to run this software, free and open source and the cloud just don't mix because people don't have a cloud that they can deploy to. It's a technically complicated thing. The average end user just can't do it. So as of now, the cloud and free and open source software is complete non-fit. There's kind of a long tail of software that doesn't get created as a result of that. Most importantly, from my perspective, the cloud is not decentralized, and I'm a believer in there being public goods and things that are not owned by individual corporations. And so I would very much like to have the personal computing revolution continue, and each of us have some amount of control over our own computing devices. So that's my big important problem with using the cloud for everything. So what we want is something that is a bit of a hybrid of the two, right? We want some of the properties of the cloud. We still want to have that kind of global connectivity where I can show up and talk to anybody else that happens to be using the application. I still want the architecture to be simple to work with. Client server is real simple to work with. I would like whatever we replace it with to still be pretty straightforward to build on. It needs to scale well enough that I can run applications. It doesn't have to be Google scale, but it certainly needs to be better than capping out at 10 people using the thing. So those are the things like the cloud that we want, but at the same time, we also don't want to have a whole lot of third-party dependency. So, ideally, we're not having to have most of the software being run by third-party. That's in our control. As an end user, I would like to not have to maintain it, same as we currently have. I would like to have much better privacy than what we have with the cloud, with end-to-end encryption, or just not involving a third party at all. And then I would like to have end-user flexibility. I would like to do general computing. I'd like to be able to fork my software, things like that. So there's a kind of a gap right now in the computing stack where you have personal computing on the one hand and you have cloud computing on the other, and we want something that's kind of right in the middle, and that would be peer-to-peer computing, and that is what we are trying to accomplish with the Hypercore protocol. So one day the Hypercore protocol was born. Now there's some challenges to peer-to-peer computing. Here are a few of them. The networks that we all tend to use at home or at college or what have you tend to be very hostile to peer-to-peer connectivity. You got to figure out how to find people. So, an identity solution, you got to deal with scaling up the system. You got to deal with finding information, and then distributed systems in general are just pretty difficult to work with. You got to worry about cap theorem and coming to consensus in your system, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm moving quickly here, but there are two in particular that the Hypercore protocol is designed to address, and that is the trouble with the networks, the hostile networks, and scaling up the system. And it handles a little bit of the distributed systems problems, but we're going to focus on the first two that I got bolded there. So let's start with that hostile NATs and firewalls right there. There's a part of the Hypercore protocol called Hyperswarm, and its job is to arrange secure connections. So this is an important point. It's one of my major takeaways, so I'm going to put it in nice bold letters there. Hyperswarm arranges secure connections. This is one of the major things that the Hypercore protocol accomplishes. It does this between two devices in an ad hoc fashion, no matter what kind of network you're in. The way that works is that there is a mesh network throughout the internet called a DHT. And your computer will announce itself to that DHT saying, here I am, here's my IP, here's a topic that I am interested in being involved with. Somebody else will say, hey, I'm looking for people involved in that topic, where can I find them? And the DHT will point to that device, right? So it's a really straightforward, I announce myself, somebody else can ask about it, and then they can find them through querying the DHT. So that's what it is designed to do. It's got some, oh yeah, and then of course, once that happens, you can talk to each other, right? So that is the purpose of Hyperswarm, is to arrange these secure connections with each other. The nice properties of this is that the exchanged, the connection that gets established is fully private. No information about what you're intending to talk about is leaked out to the DHT or to any third party. So, as well as the fact that the connection itself is encrypted using the noise framework. So you have end-to-end encryption occurring in these connections, which is, of course, a pretty important property to have. So that is how you're getting a secure connection. The DHT handles hole punching for you. Hole punching is how we deal with hostile networks. It's a technique for dealing with getting through a firewall, for getting through the network address translation layer. It's actually a pretty unique property that it is a DHT that arranges the hole punch. It's one of the actually neatest features about this, because sometimes when you try to do this, usually you need to have kind of fixed servers running somewhere to handle it. But in this case, the DHT does it for you as part of its protocol. So that is a major feature of this, and the team has been working on a major update. They think that they claim, honestly, this makes me even feel a little skeptical, but they claim they've got 99% success rates coming along. So they seem to be pretty confident in their work. I think that's a exciting bit right there. There's another feature that they have coming along. I think this should deliver, and that is a pre-connect authentication flow here, where basically when somebody tries to connect, they will have to expose their public key to the person they're trying to connect to. The person that they're trying to connect to can then look at that public key and say yes or no as to whether or not they want to accept the connection. And if they don't want to accept it, they don't even have to reveal that they're online. They can just say, nah, I'm not interested, drop the connection. So you can have bidirectional authentication in these connections. And as somebody receiving the connection, you can kind of hide whether or not you just didn't get the message or you're not interested in talking to that person, which is nice for avoiding being mapped too heavily. That said, there is still IP leakage in this design. The DHT that Hyperswarm is basically a giant table of IP addresses. So somebody could look through the DHT and start to find which IP addresses are used in the system. They shouldn't be able to figure out what you're talking about, but they might figure out the two devices are interested in talking to each other. So there's a little bit of the topology that can be mapped out by querying the DHT. For now, that's just going to have to be a future goal to improve upon. It's just one of the downsides of this design, but otherwise, it's a pretty handy piece of software. So Hyperswarm, part of the HyperCore protocol, arranges secure connections, one of our big takeaways. So because of this, we can create secure peer-to-peer connections, and what next? Now we need to address the scaling question of peer-to-peer computing here. The problem you have is with peer-to-peer, you want to have all these computers working together to basically run an application. And this is a little bit challenging because you're going to have some of these connections be real fast, some of them are going to be real slow. No way of knowing, and that whether or not they're fast or slow could change randomly. You're going to have some of these devices coming offline completely at random because these are people's laptops and phones and things like that. So it's a pretty unpredictable network. And if I were trying to build an application and taking a sort of naive approach where I just connected to everybody that I am interested in talking to on this application, maybe it's like a Twitter clone or something like that, and every time I'm trying to construct my feed, I'm asking everybody, hey, what's your latest post? It would be very slow, right? Like I can't be sending live requests to everybody there. So we're going to take some inspiration from BitTorrent here. And what we're going to try to do is get the network to work in aggregate so that it basically performs as well as the fastest node that's available, right? So if there's a slow node, no big deal. It's not going to slow down the entire thing. We're going to try to get the network to behave as well as the fastest node that's available. And because we're working in aggregate through bandwidth sharing, sometimes the network could perform even better than the fastest node in the network. The core technique that we use for this is very similar to BitTorrent. So let's talk about how that works. This is the HyperCore protocol, and one of the core pieces of it is the HyperCore, which provides scalable data hosting, and this is my second takeaway, so that's going in bold as well. The HyperCore is for scalable data hosting. This is the other major thing that that this protocol provides. Now, the way that it does that is the hypercores are append-only logs. When I say an append-only log, what that means is that it's a piece of data. You can get data from it by saying, give me entry number 1, give me entry number 5, things like that. You can append data to it, meaning you can add to the end. So I can add a new entry to the end of it. What you can't do is you can't go back and edit an entry after you put one in there. So I can't say, hey, change number 1 to some other value. That's fixed. And you also can't delete something off the log. So you can only append to the log. And then we identify these things using a public key. So every hypercore has its own ID, which is a public key. And then we sign each of the items in the log so that you know that it actually belongs to the log, right? So you got a public key acting as the identifier. How do I know an entry belongs to that hypercore? Well, there's a signature on it that matches it to that public key. In practice, what's actually happening is the individual entries aren't being signed. What we're doing is we're building a Merkle tree as each entry is added. And so you'll get a new root hash every time an entry is added, and that's what we sign. We actually sign the root hash. And the reason we use a Merkle tree here is that the Merkle tree basically encompasses all the history with its hash. So that's how we're able to detect if they try to change the history. So the Merkle tree is really important to enforcing that append-only constraint. It is also pretty efficient for transferring over the network, which is also why BitTorrent uses a Merkle tree. Now, why does this scale? If you know what BitTorrent is, then you probably can guess already. I create a hypercore, I've got it on my laptop here, and I send it out to somebody else. That person that receives it, they've downloaded the data, they can then rehost it to somebody else. Because all of the data is signed and authenticated, the original author does not have to be the only one hosting it. Anybody else can also provide the hosting. So you basically have a distributed server architecture occurring here. And it's not just that you can fetch it from anybody, but you can fetch it from multiple different devices at once. So that helps quite a bit with the scaling of the network. So that, again, we're able to share bandwidth. We're able to deal with people coming online and offline randomly. And we're able to take advantage of the fastest connections that are available to us. So scalable data hosting is a major component of the Hypercore protocol. So here we are in our story. Now, let's talk about how you build a database on top of that. You have these append-only logs, and you need to have something a little more useful, let's say like a key value store. And so let's talk about an example that we have of that called the Hyper-B. The Hyper-B is a key value database on top of Hypercore. It looks a whole lot like LevelDB. And the way it works is that you have this log, so all you got to do is write your transactions in the key value space onto that log. So let me give a slightly better visualization there. So here we have a Hyper-B where we have had 5 operations occur. We put hello equals world, then we put hello equals universe, then we put num hellos equals 1, then we delete the key hello, and then we put num hellos equals 0. So that's the current contents of our log, 5 entries in there, and when you run a query on it, you would expect that query to reflect the state after all those transactions were run. So list keys, there's only 1 key left, num hellos, because we deleted the hello key. If I get num hellos, the last value written to it was 0. If you get hello, it'll be undefined because we deleted that thing. An interesting property of the fact that it's built on a log like this is that you actually get versioning baked in. So you could actually rewind back to a previous version and run the queries. So let's say we're going to go back to version 3 and then run the query. You'll actually get the state at that point. So if I list the keys at sequence number 3, you'll see there's both hello and num hellos because we hadn't deleted hello yet. Num hellos will be 1 because that's the value we had just put there on transaction number 3, and the version of the value of hello is universe because that's the last thing we had written at that stage. So a nice little feature to have inside of these things. As a quick aside, the reason that Hyper-Bs are called Hyper-Bs is they are actually using a B tree to give a nice performance, and the B tree is sort of distributed out through the log. It's out of the scope of this talk to explain how that works, but as a consequence of this sort of streaming B tree that is written in each of these transactions, you're able to scale very nicely as more and more entries get going, because there's a real good chance that as you get to like 1,000 entries in a Hyper-B, you can start to get to the point where it's not scaling very well because it's having to scan the whole log. This embedded Hyper-B, this embedded B tree inside the Hyper-B helps that actually maintain roughly log n performance. So it's a quite a nice data structure on top of the log. So now we can finally build peer-to-peer applications. And for this part of it, I'm just going to step through some of the instructions that are on the website. If you go to hypercore-protocol.org, you can see a lot of these instructions I'm going to show. And this will hopefully just give you a quick intuition about what it's like to use this tech. So you can install a daemon that can run in the background and keep the network stack going for you, and then we call that hype. That's how you can do it there using Node.js. So once you've installed it, you just call hype daemon start, and that'll get it going in the background for you. You can also programmatically start the daemon, which is how I personally tend to do it quite often. So you just instantiate the hyperspace server and call ready, and there it goes. Now it's sitting there listening on the networking side and replicating information for you. And then you instantiate a client to it, and that's how you're able to talk to the daemon. And so the client could actually be, the client and the server could be in the same process, or they could be separate. It's a nice feature, so you can have lots of applications sharing access to the same daemon. So when you want to create or get a hypercore, you use something called the core store, the place where you store your hypercore. So you call client.core-store. So a little function there gives you the core store. And then you can create a core just like this. You do store.get, and you can pass in some parameters like a value encoding that you want to use on it. And then you can call client.replicate, and that puts it on the network saying if anybody tries to access it by the core's key, we'll go ahead and share it with them. So in this example here, we're appending 2 entries, hello as the first entry and world as the second one, and then putting it on the network. And somebody else could access it remotely by passing in the key of that hypercore into their core store. And they call replicate and get 0 and get 1, and they're getting the values out. So I'll put those side by side for you to take a look at there. You can see creating the hypercore up at the top, and accessing it remotely at the bottom. Really pretty straightforward. Let's now look at what it takes to create a Hyper-B. It's actually incredibly straightforward. You got another class called the Hyper-B class, and you pass in the hypercore that it's built on top of into the constructor of the Hyper-B. So that's real easy, and then after that you get a nice key value interface that's really pretty similar to LevelDB. And Hyper-B is what I use for just about everything that I build on top of Hypercore. In fact, I'm kind of in the process of building out a whole document store on top of it, and I like it quite a bit. So here are the takeaways from the talk. Hypercore is for peer-to-peer computing. It creates secure connections, and it is designed for scalable peer-to-peer data hosting. And that last one is my real big takeaway. If you remember anything about Hypercore, it's peer-to-peer data hosting that scales. That is what this technology is designed to do for you. My current project, I mentioned I was going to give a plug about this. This is kind of my successor to the Beaker browser, and we can talk, like I said, a little bit more about that in the Q&A, but ATEC Cloud is what I'm currently working on right now. If you are interested at all in learning more about it or getting involved in any way, I'm really aiming for an open contributor model with this one, so feel free to check it out and ping me online if you have any interest in what I'm working on, and I will happily get back to you. And that is about it. So if you want to learn more about Hypercore, go to hypercore-protocol.org. I'm at P. Frazee on Twitter, and that is my talk. Thanks for listening.
Okay, so that was Paul's talk. Thank you so much for that talk. That was so smooth and so in-depth. It puts a lot of my personal talks to shame, to be honest. So I just want to reiterate, if you have any questions in chat, please let us know, and I will send them over. And actually, our co-founder, G.I. Jack, has a question, which is he's asking, I'm going to read it straight out. What hardware are you hosting? Like Colo, or guess what? Colo is just someone else's data center, LOL.
What hardware am I using?
Yeah, to do all of this.
Well, so I don't have don't have any actively running services right now. I do have an old one that is just waiting to be killed off called Hashbase. But at the moment, I don't have any services that I'm currently terribly interested in operating. When I do use one, I tend to stick with using AWS or GCP just because it's cheap. But the ideal future that I would love to have, the thing that I think this kind of technology is really uniquely suited for, is getting to a world where you actually just buy a Raspberry Pi or a similar piece of hardware that's under $500, stick it in the closet, and then you're able to run your software on that, because we're talking about having 2 terabytes of hard drive space and a networking layer that's able to deal with all the difficulties of hole punching through the NATs and things like that. So you're able to synchronize between multiple of these devices living at people's homes, and suddenly it's not even about colo anymore. It's about actually home servers being a place to run most of your software. So there's what I do right now, because I'm stuck in the world that we live in, and what I would love to have, which is that world where everybody's got their own home server.
Awesome. Was there any other projects involved besides Beaker Browser that used either the older form of DAT or the current Hypercore that was interesting, but it just didn't take off on the ground?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of cool stuff that people have worked on through the years. Cabal was a really neat sort of Slack clone that actually still works. It's still out there. There's a project called Cobox, which was similar to in some ways similar to what I'm doing with ATEC, but was geared especially towards, I believe, displacing Dropbox and creating a sort of, it was designed for co-ops, so Cobox, and the idea was they were going to provide a sort of way of self-hosting your Dropbox on-prem and then providing and receiving backups from kind of sister organizations. So you'd set up an arrangement with some other co-op that you're friends with and say, all right, we'll allocate 100 gigs for you. You allocate 100 gigs for us. We'll back up to each other, and that way we're able to make sure that our systems are being backed up off premises, but not having to pay for a commercial service to do that, which is kind of ideologically fitting for co-ops. I don't know where they are currently, where they've left off. I think they may have actually run out of funding, sadly. Those are the two that jump straight to mind. Of course, lots of other small projects that have been worked on. We've had maybe 3 different social network endeavors, including one by me, and lots of little things.
That's neat. The project we were actually working on for a while before we got an update that Beaker browser will eventually be depreciated to some degree was we were going to make a DApp version of our website that its only exclusivity is that will have its own blog and that it would actually have a cabal chat as like a permanent because that's one of the reasons why we like streaming on PeerTube is that we've had videos get blasted off of YouTube and Twitch of ours, but our PeerTube instance, which is awesome, will always host it because it's decentralized. Speaking of decentralized, my question is, we have covered in this past, either through our meetings or other shows, decentralized networks that are more based on solid blockchain tech, such as ZeroNet and LokiNet. I was wondering if you could talk about the similarities and differences between networks like that mainly use blockchain technology for the decentralization and what you're currently doing with Hypercore.
Yeah, totally. So there's just an enormous amount of overlap between these kinds of technologies. In many ways, actually, I've been trying to push people to think of them as being more similar than they currently do think about them because, for instance, the Hypercore technology is basically, it's very similar to a blockchain. You have these signed ledgers that are being distributed throughout the network. But the most significant difference between something like Hypercore and something like, let's say, Ethereum or Bitcoin is that you are sharding the data sets in the Hypercore network almost by default. Whereas in a traditional blockchain, you actually want to have one, normally what you're doing is having one data set. And so the whole purpose of Bitcoin when it first came along was to have all the computers in the world agree on what the current state of that blockchain is. It's a global decentralized consensus. That's what's novel about it. Whereas, with Hypercore, it's basically saying every device is going to be creating its own data set and sharing that out. And it's using, again, some of the same crypto primitives, but there's absolutely no consensus. Everybody has control of their own data set. Now, the interesting results of that are that you're going to be able to get a lot better throughput in terms of data publishing and data querying in the Hypercore network, because there's absolutely no consensus overhead for getting that information out there. You write something from your device, on your device to your kind of little chain, and it just syncs out into the network. That's that, right? Blockchains, of course, are going to have to come to a global consensus on the state of the thing, and what's the turnaround on that? 5 minutes to 30 minutes, whatever the blockchain is.
I'm going to work. Keep talking. I'm just going to sneeze. But keep going.
All right. So, so it's just sort of, I think, tools in your toolbox, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes you need to have some global consensus on state. And a real good example of that, other than financial ledgers, would be, like naming systems are a real obvious use case for that sort of thing. You just want to make sure that, with a global naming system, you need everybody to have agreement on what the names are. And so having global state in some cases is real important. And in other cases, having high throughput from lots of sharded data is actually a much better scenario. So, for instance, if I were trying to build a social application right now, what I might do is I might use something like ENS, the name system on top of Ethereum, for the usernames, but then I would use Hypercore for the actual data sets that users are providing. Another advantage of using Hypercore is that you're not going to have to pay a transaction fee for every mutation of the thing, right? Which actually gets real important in some cases. Whereas if you're on a blockchain, you're paying a transaction fee to access it. So there's in the long run, I think that Ethereum and Hypercore and IPFS and BitTorrent, similar kind of products, are really just going to be kind of tools in the toolkit in the same way that all the different blockchains are.
Awesome. One of our users in chat asked, battery notwithstanding, can one host Hypercore solely within the browser?
No, and the reason for that is that browsers are real restrictive in the APIs they provide, especially when it comes to networking, but also with storage, as well as cross-domain access to the storage. So This is why I ended up making Beaker in the first place. You can't, in order to access the hypercore network, you need to be able to create UDP and TCP connections. You need to have persistent storage that can be accessed as your cache of information, as the place where keys are being stored. You need to have performant crypto operations. There's a whole lot of stuff that the browsers are really just not geared to provide. Honestly, the company that, Google is sort of making gestures to try to fix that with their whole Project Fugu, but they are getting a lot of pushback from the rest of the browser vendors. A lot of people are just kind of like, let's not introduce that kind of risk into the stack. So we're a little kneecapped on that front. You can run a fair amount of the software inside of the browser using like Browserify, but you're just not going to be able to speak to the rest of the network because you can't open up those connections. So you would just be like having to use a WebSocket proxy. You could kind of run a low-rent version of it on WebRTC, but I've never been a big fan of that. It's just kind of not the greatest.
I don't want to waste your time, sir, but this has been awesome so far, Paul. I'm going to do about 3 or 4 more questions, if that's okay for you. On Twitch, we have a follow-up question, which is any ideas for peer-to-peer compute?
Yeah, I mean, that's a pretty broad topic right there, right? It's going to depend on a lot of your constraints. If you're talking peer-to-peer compute, like I can ship you a piece of software and you run it on my behalf, and then send back the results, that's one thing. Versus we are going to agree on a piece of software, we're both going to work on it, and then we're going to collate our results together afterwards. They're both pretty different, but I feel like both of them kind of fit under that idea. Another kind of thing that comes to mind with that is smart contracts, which again is kind of what Ethereum is all about. And that's similar to that. I'm going to send you a piece of code, you're going to run it and send me back the results. But on top of that, you're going to take advantage of the blockchain kind of style of primitives to provide external auditability on how it's actually run. These seem like things that it's really going to depend on whether or not it's providing enough value. Because one of the things that's not real clear at this stage is what the compute layer is going to look like really flat out for the entire decentralized world. We know more or less where the blockchain VMs are moving right now, which is geared towards smart contracts. But for an end user that might be taking advantage of Web3 tech or decentralization tech and running some kind of application, we don't know if they're going to be using a web browser, if they're going to have some amount of an execution environment which is different than the browser is currently, but it's designed to run kind of back-end behavior, which if you're getting rid of the server, you kind of need to have something like that, some kind of persistent process that runs in the background. This is part of what I'm trying to answer with the ATEC thing. And then you also got to ask, based on your security model, are you getting untrusted code being sent to the users at random and they execute it, and that's how the peer-to-peer computing aspect works, or is it like installed applications that the user has to choose to download? I'm kind of inclined to think that one of the major drivers of all this will end up being VR, AR, and the metaverse, which I think is probably where a lot of decentralization will actually all come to a head. And probably the drive to have a lot of computing flexibility will give us something similar to what the web browser did with the decentralization stack and VR and AR as kind of the core primitives. So that is where I would put my bet on that, but we're speculating out pretty far at this stage.
I'd be very interested, even though this term's probably copyright already, of like a hyper VR platform based on hypercore. That would probably be an interesting thing going forward.
I would love that. I don't think it's copyrighted, so knock yourself out.
Well, this project's open source, I want to remind our audience, so you can work on it and reach out to Paul. Now, speaking of which, what has been either the funniest, most frustrating, or both either pull request or bug report you have seen on this project in its many years that you can legally disclose?
Oh, man. Well, I guess I'll scope that to Beaker because that's where the real fun came in. I did have probably the one that comes to mind straight away was trying to get video playback working correctly, which is, some folks may already know where I'm going with this because I talked about it when it was happening. Basically, so the way that we were using the Hypercore protocol in Beaker was, all right, let's make a drop-in replacement for HTTP, right? Because, I mentioned Hyper-V before, but Hyperdrive is one of the other major data structures that's the Hypercore protocol provides, and that's like a POSIX-like file system. It makes it a really straightforward solution for hosting websites, right? So, all right, you just drop in Hyper and you can go. And so one would think, all right, great thing to do would be just be able to take video and audio and, stick it in the video tag or the audio tag and play back. And we're using Electron for Beaker, and for some reason the playback wouldn't work. So I dig into the code, and it turns out that basically Chromium has baked into it 2 different pieces of logic for how video or really media playback can occur. One of them is fully buffered, like if you were to provide it with a blob through JavaScript, the full piece of data. And the other one is streaming, like you would normally expect over an HTTPS connection. And they had some code in there where it basically said if it's HTTP or HTTPS, it's streaming, and if it's not, it's buffered. And that's it. That's the logic. You can't configure it any further. So I had to dig into the Chromium source code and construct a whole thing to be able to configure this behavior so we could get the streaming video playback inside of the Chromium code base. Figured out how to submit a PR to Chromium, which you wouldn't believe how hard they make that. Submit the PR, and the response was, "What the fuck is this? Why? What are you doing?" Like, they have no idea why you would want this, because it's way outside the wheelhouse of like what Chromium is even thinking about. So they're just like, "No, we're not going to do that." So I end up producing a patch file because Electron has to maintain a number of patch files that they apply to Chromium for things like this. So I produced one, managed to get an automated test going, which was also a bastard because I had to get a video of a certain size to be able to play in the automated test, but I can't check in a big video. The story is getting way too long at this stage. So long story short, it takes forever. I finally get all this done. I'm excited. I release a new version of Beaker with video playback finally solved. And you can't seek. You can't seek around. I tested that the playback worked, but I didn't test if you could seek. I did all that work. You couldn't skip around. And at that point, I just said, screw it. Screw it. You're just gonna have to work around that. So that's the story that comes to mind.
It's funny because as you were saying that, I was literally thinking in real time, either Chromium's going to fail, Electron is going to fail, or both, especially since our co-founder Jack has been dealing with Electron, and he's not doing it today unless he wants to, but that could literally be a talk in itself. Unless chat has any other questions, I'm going to go with 2 more questions, and we're going to end this. So, I know you said this would take, both these questions are things you said would take forever to explain, but I'm going to, screw it, I'm sorry, I'm going to have you explain at least some of this. Can you describe for our audience and personally myself, what is a B in the context you're saying in Hyper-Bs as opposed to the things that Oprah sends on their audience for laughs?
Right. Yeah. So it's the B in Hyper-B stands for B tree. B trees are a data structure of that are basically designed to kind of parcel up data structures for quick lookup. And traditionally, the way that you expect to use a B tree is a relatively you expect to be able to change entries in place. So you'll introduce new pieces of information, and then you'll rebalance the B tree to keep it kind of looking left and right as you move through the entries. You expect it to kind of be reordered. What you don't normally expect to do is to have an append-only log where you can't actually go back and modify the entries. And so getting a B tree-like structure into an append-only log is rather challenging. Now, if you don't do this or something like it, you're going to end up with a real bad scaling problem because if you're just writing each transaction, saying, put the value of 5 at the key of foo, then you're going to have to read the whole transaction history to figure out what the most recent write for foo was. And that's just going to take way too long. So you need to have some kind of an indexing optimization to find exactly which transaction to look at in the log when you want to get a value out. So we need to have something like a B tree. And so the answer for how that gets done is, again, this is painting in broad strokes, and I'm painting partly in broad strokes because I'm not the guy that implemented this thing. There's a really great workshop on the Hypercore Protocol website, if you look in the workshops, that explains exactly the logic for how you do this. But they basically just took segments of the B tree and just added it into every entry. So in addition to writing, here's the key, here's the operation, put or delete, here's the value, they would also include a couple of the pointers that comprise a B tree so that it could basically skip backwards in the log And they were able to find a way to more or less represent the same kind of information that a B tree normally encodes, but in this kind of streaming indexing design. And that's how they were able to more or less create a B tree on top of an appendable log. And that's why you're able to get pretty good query performance out of it.
Okay, and just because we have no more questions in chat, because a bunch of people are watching, I think they're just speechless right now. You were talking about your new project that was basically, as far as I can understand, using hypercore for essentially replicating cloud computing process. Could you get a little bit more information to kind of wet the whistle about like what you're trying to achieve here and what are kind of the next steps for that project?
Yeah, so in a lot of ways, this is directly my successor project to Beaker. The thing that was, and I'll sort of talk about why Beaker's winding down by way of explaining this. So Beaker was actually pretty successful at the core thing it was designed to do, which is to provide peer-to-peer websites. That worked out of the box almost day one. Problem is that static websites are not particularly interesting. Most of what you're trying to accomplish is to have full applications online. And so most of the years of working on Beaker were spent trying to put together a full stack of the kind of API primitives and tools required to run a peer-to-peer application. And, creating an application stack is challenging, generally speaking, but when you're also working with peer-to-peer, it's even harder. And then when you're in the web platform, it's even harder because people are pretty averse to significant changes to how a web application works and what kind of protocols you're introducing. So you have a lot of risk aversion, and it makes it hard to kind of take chances. And we came pretty close. There were a number of things that we did that were not bad solutions, but because they were being baked into the web platform, they tended to have this kind of a permanence that seemed to way exceed what we felt confident saying, like, yeah, we could take this to a standards committee and they'll adopt this. Usually it was kind of something that was a little too bespoke to the problem domain. It's, sometimes you would need to have processes that are running continuously, like an indexer, which the browser is just a somewhat difficult environment to be introducing that kind of stuff into. On top of that, and this may be one of the most significant problems that you have, is that the user device is pretty resource constrained. They're powerful devices and everything, but if you're running a process that's taking up 15% of RAM and about 10% of CPU all the time, that can start to affect the end user's performance quite a bit, and it's not terribly hard to be hitting that spot when you have a full application stack, a full kind of service and networking stack that's running in the background. In fact, it's pretty easy to go beyond that. It's also easy to start filling up the hard drive as they're browsing around or trying to run queries and things like that. On top of all that, you really have to be pretty miserly about introducing new technologies in general. I mean, Beaker was originally designed to be for all decentralization protocols. I wanted to have IPFS in there and secure scuttlebutt and any blockchain that wanted to show up. And pretty quickly I realized, like, well, wait a minute, no, you're just going to absolutely destroy the end user's computer because you have way too many networking stacks trying to run on top of that computer at the same time. It's just not going to work out. So the browser just may not be the right place for these technologies to live, is ultimately, especially at this time where they are still in development. They haven't stabilized their APIs, haven't stabilized their solutions, and have not optimized their resource usage prior to being put onto the user device. So with ATEC, a lot of the thinking is, all right, well, the ideas are still pretty solid. This networking layer is pretty good. Perhaps we just need to approach it from maintaining a server client architecture, but then modifying the server side of things to take advantage of peer-to-peer computing. And if you're able to accomplish that, like I was mentioning earlier, you get a pretty good solution for sticking a box in somebody's home and accomplishing a lot of the computing you expect to do without having to compromise on any of the properties you're looking for. It's just that your devices remain thin clients to that server that you got running at home. So that solves our resource starvation real fast. In fact, it opens it up enough that we can start to introduce any other protocols like we originally wanted to do with Beaker. Opens up a whole lot more disk space for running bigger queries and things like that. And then it also, in fact, the way that this is being designed, not only does it not have to worry about creating the web platform equivalent, it's actually trying to go as far as it can into the kind of Unixy philosophy of having a nice general and composable RPC layer, so that the user land of the system is actually highly flexible, and new kind of protocols, new kinds of databases, things like that can be installed by end users without having to have a kind of a monolithic API surface like the browser normally has. So just as a general computing environment, it's a much better option compared to the weird constraints that browsers give us, with everything being relatively top-down in this design. So that's more or less what's going on with ATEC, and how it's progressed from the original ideas of Beaker.
Awesome. Well, so far, unless there's the last second question here, that's kind of, I'm going to minimize this. That's it. That's kind of our slot here. Thank you so much for this again. I was so excited to have you or someone as part of your project on here for many months. And it was just us working out our schedule to see when this could happen, and I'm really happy that when we reach out, you could accept. The last thing, as we always do for speakers, is I know you had a little thing about hypercore-protocol.org. Is there any other things you either want to shout out or mention, other ways that you wish to be contacted?
Easiest way to get in touch is on Twitter, so hit me up at Paul Frazee if you ever want to talk about anything. There's also a Discord for the Hypercore protocol, which you can find the link for that on the Hypercore protocol website, so feel free to join us there. We got a nice little community running.
Awesome. Well, again, I'm going to temporarily mute the synth call. It's up to you if you want to stick around for a bit or not. I know you're probably a busy person, so are we. We're about to go into our other pre-recorded video again. Thank you so much for your time, and I hope you have an excellent, safe day, and good luck with the future of the Hypercore project. Thank you, Paul.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Here we go. So as we revert back to not display caption mode, here we go. Turn this off. Yeah, so that was Paul's talk right there. It was awesome. It was way better than what I thought it was going to be. And we are going to take a momentary break. Hold on a second, I'm going to cough. And I will explain. While I'm wearing a mask and coughing in a moment, you can probably guess where I'm going with that. But first, we're going to take another intermission break as I disinfect a bunch of stuff, where we are going to take a look at recently the Wikimania event happened, where the Wikimania event, where it's basically like a giant, like think of a hacker convention, but just for Wikipedia, run by the Wikipedia Foundation, and it more goes into academic stuff and editing and politics, and there's some code and stuff. And there was out of all the amazing talks, there was a really interesting talk about, which a lot of people probably don't know about, which is that due to the government in Turkey, they eliminated all access to Wikipedia for a while, which means the existing Wikipedia group from Turkey also kind of disappeared and had to go underground. So there's many, many years, or a good time period, where there wasn't any Wikipedia in Turkey. And then something changed, and Wikipedia was allowed in Turkey again. So the Wikimedia Foundation had the Wikipedians from Turkey talk about what it was like during those dark ages, and how they've come back and what they've had to do to achieve coming back and getting around all of the sort of online censorship that the country does. And this is important because I kind of feel like we're going through this with America right now, if not in the very near future. So just keep that in mind. And when people talk about garbage countries and stuff in this state, I mean, hello, have you seen January 6th? Have you seen our economy? Have you seen all the disease and stuff going around with no one health insurance? We are basically, also a country too. Let's put it that way, and we're not doing too well. So without further ado, we are going to air this. I do want to mention that our synth call is now going to be publicly open. So if you do want to join in video on chat later, I just posted the link to our synth call in chat. It's also on our Mastodon, our Medium, and our Twitter. And lastly, even if no one's in there, we're going to give you some DCG 2.1 updates. There's some good news, there's some bad news, and there's light at the end of the tunnel. So without further ado, let's look at censorship of information in Turkey. So we'll be right back.
Hi everyone, and welcome to our presentation about the ban of Wikipedia in Turkey. I'm Kütük, I'm an editor in Turkish Wikipedia, and I'm together with Başak. We both have been active Wikipedians for over 15 years now, and we are the two of the founding members of Wikimedia User Group Turkey. Today we will talk about the ban of Wikipedia in Turkey, how it happened, how it started, why it started, what was the process of lifting that ban, and how it ended, and how we came back afterwards. Even though most Wikipedias do not have such an existential threat, we believe every different Wikipedia project can learn from our experience and what we have been through. So, access to all Wikipedia projects, including Turkish Wikipedia, English Wikipedia, and all other languages, was banned in April of 2017. At first, it was an administrative measure taken by the government, and then it was backed up with a judicial one. The ban was technically legal under the Turkish internet law, but the law was overreaching. And actually, the articles caused the ban of Wikipedia in Turkey were on English Wikipedia, not on Turkish Wikipedia. And it didn't have anything to do with the Turkish community, but the Turkish community had the most negative effects from this ban, and the Turkish people who couldn't access Wikipedia. And actually, the problems in the articles were very easy to fix. So the articles were about state-sponsored terrorism and foreign intervention and involvement in the Syrian civil war, and the articles were about Turkey having links to ISIS and Al-Qaeda and supporting them. These were stated as the cause of the ban when the ban went live in 2017. But the Turkish government has a tendency to ban popular websites instead of finding solutions. So Twitter, YouTube, and a lot of more websites were banned during the last 10 years. Right now, Twitter, YouTube, etc. are open, but PayPal, Uber, and Booking.com, and about 300,000 more websites are still banned. So this slide is a joke because it's a bit of a dark story about freedom of expression, so I had to lighten this up somehow. Yeah. So unlike Twitter, YouTube, and other for-profit sites who try to make business in Turkey and earn money in Turkey, Wikimedia Foundation did not give up to the demands of the Turkish government at all at first. So they did not agree with the censorship of the content, and they decided to challenge the decision in courts for freedom of expression. So the Wikimedia Foundation contacted us immediately, a few hours after the ban was established in Turkey. We discussed the situation, we discussed the Turkish public's reactions, we discussed the cultural background and what to do next. So the foundation immediately hired the best internet lawyers in Turkey and started the appeal process and released statements. The legal process took about 2.5 years. So from the start of the ban in April of 2017 to the end of the ban in January 2020, the Wikipedia, both the Turkish one and every other language version, was banned in Turkey. So no one in Turkey could directly reach those websites. The final appeal was filed to European Court of Human Rights, and on October 31st, in 2019, they asked for a statement from Turkey. And after that, on December 2019, they decided that the ban should be lifted. But the problem was the European Court of Human Rights does not have a direct jurisdiction over Turkey, so they cannot order Turkey to do something. But the Turkish government and the Turkish court system decided to lift the ban in January 15 of 2020 after 2.5 years. So the ban was not a good experience for us at all in Turkish Wikipedia, as you would imagine. Only the most active and most dedicated Wikipedians remained. active on Turkish Wikipedia. Almost all of the IP edits were gone. Only the experienced people who were very dedicated to project were able to stay. Everyone in Turkey found ways to circumvent this ban. So some people used mirror websites like Wikizero. So you could just type a zero in front of Wikipedia address in URL, and you could just reach the website through a mirror, but that had lots of advertisement. Some people, more technically savvy people, changed their DNS addresses and set up a VPN or used a browser like Tor. But these solutions are not also perfect because Wikipedia doesn't allow all open proxies, open VPNs, so it wasn't very effective all the time. And here is the direct result of the ban. So in Turkish Wikipedia and Arabic Wikipedia had similar page views before the ban. And during the ban period, the page views of Turkish Wikipedia decreased by 80%. So in other words, 80% of our readers couldn't reach us and couldn't reach free information. After the ban was lifted, the numbers came back a bit, but we are still catching up with the Arabic Wikipedia. We still have the similar, we are still behind of them. The new article count decreased a bit. We lost about 12,000 articles that could have been written, which is about 2.5% of our total article count right now. But after the ban was lifted, we gained a lot of new users and we gained a lot of new articles. During the ban, about 80% of our editors, most active editors who has more than one or more edits, stopped editing Wikipedia. And the number of new users decreased by almost 90%, as it was very difficult to create an account, and it was very difficult to reach Wikipedia through a VPN by creating an account. So to recap, we lost most of our users during the ban, we lost a lot of articles, and we lost a lot of readers due to the ban. One positive thing is the vandalism was not a big problem during that period, because vandals generally use IP addresses in Turkish. But after the ban, we came back with a new blood, with new users and new people to onboard. And we grew our outreach efforts exponentially so that we can rebuild Wikipedia after having such a blow. From the rest of the presentation, my dear colleague Başak will tell you about the story, how we came back and rebuilt our community.
Yeah, thank you very much, Fred. Yes, during the block, the internet users in Turkey have really missed Wikipedia a lot. You might be remembering the Miss Turkey campaign. If you go to the next slide, Fred, maybe you are remembering this campaign that Wikimedia Foundation launched for the first anniversary of the ban. During the campaign, many Wikimedians in the world expressed their support for free knowledge. In Turkey, the campaign had taken the form of Wikipedia özledik, we miss Wikipedia, and was well received in Turkey. We saw how much internet users in Turkey have missed Wikipedia with the floods of new user registrations right after the lifting of the block, as Fred shared. Our small group focused on how we would keep this new interest for Wikipedia alive. And in the next slide, I would like to go over our group's efforts on that. Since the lifting of the block, the main problem ahead of us has been rebuilding the trust in Wikipedia and open knowledge. Here are some examples of news about Wikipedia on mainstream media organs before the lifting of the block and right after it. Even after the ban was lifted in January 15th of January 2020, which was the 20th anniversary of Wikipedia, the counter-Wikipedia propaganda on pro-government sources continued for some time. We had to change this feeling of mistrust and misunderstandings about Wikipedia. In other words, we had to reintroduce Wikipedia to Turkey. Next slide, please. Our strategy can be summarized as next slide, as being more visible and open for being able to trust about Wikipedia. And although the site is very largely known and read by the public, the number of contributions have always been very low, and the community was never active. We, the active editors, didn't know each other, and anonymity is highly valued in Turkish Wikipedia community. I think Frat has difficulty in changing the slides. Yeah. And we decided to change that. And we decided that it's time to show people those simple facts. Next slide. That Wikipedians are not rare unicorns, and Wikipedia is built by ordinary, good people. Still, most editors prefer remaining anonymous, but a small group of Wikipedians started out meetups and outreach activities in partnership with other organizations. What we do, in the next slide, I summarize them. We started regular online meetings called Wiki Tuesday. Editors used Telegram channel actively. Our group formed a non-profit organization. We started to meet and collaborate with other free knowledge organizations. We directly represented Wikipedia at universities and organized many activities in partnership with civil society organizations. Now I want to go over them one by one. As I said, being more visible and open was our new strategy, and we thought that first we had to learn being visible and open to each other. So we started to meet with each other. Since the lifting of the block, Wikipedians meet twice every month, and meetings are open to all. Anyone who would like to meet with Wikipedians and ask their questions are welcomed. Secondly, many active editors use Telegram actively. There are almost 200 members in our Telegram channel. Again, anyone can join the channel, and especially new editors like using this channel to ask their questions to experienced Wikipedians, and they can be part of Adapt a Wikipedian program. And in the next slides, I want to mention that another way of increasing our visibility and building trust was forming a non-profit organization. So instead of continuing our work as an informal group of volunteers, we became a registered formal organization. Because when we started to do outreach activities and contact partners, the first question that they asked me was, who are you? Do you have a legal identity? And by forming an association, we could reply them as yes, we have an official organization registered with Ministry of Internal Affairs, and it served as a good way of building trust. And after the lifting of the block, we wanted to know other like-minded people and organizations in Turkey. We found out that we were not alone in the universe of free knowledge. Organizations like Creative Commons Turkey, OpenStreetMap Turkey, Data Literacy Association, and fact-checking organizations like TEDOR were also there, and we started to getting to know each other, visited each other's meetings, and even organized joint events. We believe having such collaboration and network is important to fight back against censorship and block in the future. When it comes to our partnerships, after the lifting of the block, we found out that all people and all kinds of organizations were more eager to collaborate with Wikipedians than even before the block. So we started some activities, and our partners were, first of all, universities. Since the ban was lifted, we had activities at 18 university departments in 5 different cities, and we directly reached over 1,000 students, university students, since the ban was lifted. Right. And in order to reintroduce Wikipedia to people other than university students, we made partnerships with civil society organizations. Some first simply asked us to make a presentation or give a talk for their members or volunteers to introduce Wikipedia. We made presentations for organizations like librarian associations, public health experts associations, teachers network. We give trainings to volunteers of city councils to improve wiki content about their cities. And after each event, we received an invitation to talk at another place. We do accept every invitation, whether it's for 3 person or 100 person. What matters for us is not the number of people participating, but finding someone to share our enthusiasm. And if an organization feels ready to start editing, we organize a thematic editathon with them. The concept of editathon was welcomed very positively by organizations because it was a very good online activity to make during the pandemic. It gave the opportunity to introduce something new to their members or volunteers and produce a meaningful work about their field. Those editathons are a little bit different than the editathons we make with experienced Wikipedians. In most of them, the goal is not producing as many articles as possible, but participants create one article or two articles for those work. And after during 2022, another member volunteered to organize regular editathons for writing women biographies. In the next slide, we see their pictures. Those editathons really took attention of the media. And in the next slide, we made wiki contests more visible to the public. We used the side notes banners and sometimes sent out press bulletins to announce contests. And we are very proud that we made the first WikiLabs contest in Turkey. We organized WikiLabs Earth, and more than 3,000 photos were uploaded. We saw this a big welcome back Wikipedia to response from internet users of Turkey. And in the next slide, we see some media coverage. We started to be seen on the media, especially on the first anniversary of the lifting of the block. We had made some interviews. We openly answered questions about the block, about the lifting of the block, but we more focus on our outreach activities and our efforts to create better content for Turkish-speaking people. And lastly, I want to wrap up like saying this, Wikipedians are ordinary good people. And Wikipedians in Turkey have been through difficult times. We are so thankful to everyone in the Wikimedia Foundation and in the movement for their efforts for lifting of the block and for their support during the block. Now we are much more active and stronger than before the block. Normalizing the public perception about Wikipedia and Wikipedians was our main problem after the lifting of the block. We see openness as a key for that. All our efforts after the lifting of the block is based on this understanding. We all know that contributing to wiki projects and being a part of our movement is as easy as clicking the edit button, but not every internet user could recognize this, and Wikipedians remain as mysterious and even suspicious people for many. Our group is now working for changing that perception, and for this purpose, some of us are more visible and accessible, although most Wikipedians remain anonymous. I am one of those more visible active Turkish Wikipedians. At university courses, webinars, seminars, editathons, we keep telling how they could be a good contributor as well. People are afraid of things they don't understand, and also governments are afraid of things they don't understand. We have to make better understood by everyone. So we believe we would trust by openly communicating with anyone interested, and Wikipedia will be richer and less vulnerable to any censorship efforts in this way. I'm glad that I could finish my verse, and thank you very much for listening. I would like to see questions if I have time. You can reach us all the time offline as well for your questions. I'm checking the Etherpad for the questions.
Okay, we have our usernames Başak and Kütük on the Etherpad and on the talk notes. So you can check the Wikimania site about our presentation, found our usernames, and you can always reach us for any questions on how the block was lifted and what was the process during that. Thank you everyone for joining our call and listening to our presentation. And for any questions, you can reach the Wikimania staff or us. And thank you for joining us.
Okay, so that was let me actually put it like this. That was the let's switch over to face cam. That was the cool talk about the censorship that was going on in Turkey and how even when this is important, I think, for a lesson for any country, especially ours in the United States, that even when a law is reversed, that doesn't mean that local municipalities, the core government itself, or society at large will support that, and heck, they might even reverse it. I mean, you saw, oh, gay marriage and stuff is legal, we have equality and nothing to fear now, like 6 years ago, and look at the state of it now, where it's just been like beaten to death again because most of the states were all like, "Urgh," and all of that type of stuff. And that can also happen with net neutrality. That can happen with stuff to FOSTA. That can happen to right to repair with the new Biden signature. That can happen to any of these. So even when you win, you still need to be vigilant on stuff because none of us, unfortunately, we technically have rights, but in reality, most of us actually have privileges, and it's up to us to make sure that, because that's how the society sees these, the simple fact of existing is seen as a privilege in our human society, unfortunately. And so it's up to us to make sure that we get these privileges and that they're made into rights and that they stay that way because, this stuff can be revoked at any time. I'm going to quickly check to see if anyone, there might be some people in, we have like roughly 2 people in chat. I might open up the chat in a bit, but oh boy, I've been doing, I've been meaning to go through a bunch of updates, so we're actually going to switch back and I'm going to do some of those. I'm going to go back to Facecam, explain a thing of very recent news of what happened with this meeting and us in general. It sounds like bad news, but we're handling it fine. And kind of a bit about like where we're going and stuff like that. So let's switch back here, and I'm gonna have to do the display capture again. So everything is gonna look weird now. Watch, 3, 2, 1. Ah! Okay. So again, this is our main website. As you can see, we've updated stuff because a bunch of things going on. First of all, if you haven't noticed, we have a new logo. Yay! This is our prototype logo. For a while, we had been like we're still keeping that AT&T Bell Labs telephone sign with the Happy Hacker on it, but we for banners and stuff and our like full display logo we've been working on this. I know this seems like an obvious, simple design, but due to a bunch of busyness the past 3 months, it's taken us forever to even put this prototype together. And I can already see some of the stuff that we're going to be adjusting in the next few weeks, but this is overall going to be the design we're going to use, and we're just going to keep refining it in the next few weeks until it becomes our like permanently crisp, everyone's cool with it, and happy new logo. Another thing that I do want to point out is that I'm trying to figure out where this was. We're either going to save this for the next meeting, or we might have a stream just for this. We were supposed to do an exclusive thing in person where, as you know, Freenode decided to commit Sudoku, and we've been asking on social media, we've been asking the public, we've been asking our own members, and we've been having a discourse between both of us co-founders on what IRC instance we should move to, because we obviously were originally on Freenode at Pound DEFCON 201. We're obviously not using that. We already knew for years some of the problems that were going on with Freenode, but it was the biggest and best and most well-known option, kind of like how we're on Twitter and Facebook. And then all of this bullcrap happens, which, by the way, for the walkout, good for them. There's a lot of people, I mean, look at Google and Apple, where, like, they're going to be like, we're going to legalize slavery, and everyone, for some reason, agrees with it. So I'm glad that all the employees had the spine, kind of like the amazing Amazon workers out there, to just walk away from this and be like, F you to the horrible decisions of their bosses. So good on them. So we hate leaving, and we commend those who left. That's the moral hacker thing to do. But now we have to find a new home. So exclusively IRC. We have thought about Matrix, but that's not technically IRC. We want like IRC as IRC. Like you load up text chat or MIRC, or what's another one? What's that one where it's like you use in browser? Is that like Lisi or something? I forget what it's called. But that's like what Uber Elite terminal hackers only use. So, we actually have 3, by the way, Jack. Our choices, which I'm going to put in the chat. No, it's not BitchX. Is we have LibreChat, Hackinit, and OFTC. And I'll do a quick explanation for all of them because I'll put it this way. We are not going to vote tonight because we're going to get into the news of why we didn't meet physically tonight in a bit. But we just want to go over, there's pros and cons of each. I'm going to go over for what I know in my head. If you have something, you can shout out in chat. Libera, sorry, I said Libre Chat. Libera Chat. Oh, God, Libre Chat. If that was like Free Software Foundation, damn, that was only last week. Just being real. Libera Chat is the one that most people move to, from what we can understand from Freenode. So it's very active, fairly new. We like a lot what we see. My personal, this is not a DCG 201 sense, but my personal thing with Liberia Chat is the good thing is that they are working on a Tor v3 Onion access to the IRC, but it's not up and running yet. So that's my only hang up. But if everyone decides to go to Liberia Chat, I have no qualms with that. And again, eventually that Tor access will be up, so hopefully it'll come sooner and later. So it's pretty neat. Yeah, and it's from the same staff from Freenode. The hack int people, or NIT as I like to pronounce it because I'm a heathen, is set up by the Chaos Computer Congress. This is the Hacker AF IRC network. The people there are really nice and friendly. Now, I will say this. It's very simple if you want to connect on ClearNet, like just normal internet connect IRC. They do have a onion, but it's actually kind of complicated to join their onion because you can't just enter it in and join. You have to like pre-register in their system, if I remember correctly, and you have to like open a browser tab, and it uses Java, and basically it like does like basically crypto mining or whatever on your machine first. It's to like validate that you're good or whatever. I have no idea how that works, and it does sound sketchy because again, hackers and particularly European hackers made it. And once you have that, you enter your registration for the onion, and then you're on there. But that is the hacker option, and it does have both, even though the Tor one is kind of difficult. And then the OFTC, as Jack wrote in chat, is a splinter group from Freenode. They were the original people who were upset about this. Oh, so now they have it as Sassel? Because these have a completely different system. What I described was their original system. Okay, so now in Hacknet, I guess, and I'll have to do further research on this now, because literally this is what it was like last year. So they must have changed this very recently. I guess like with Freenode, you have to set up a Sassel, which means we might have to update our how to connect to Tor and Freenode to instead read for Hacknet if we do move there. Or we might do that in general. Especially because I have to refigure out how you actually do a SASL or Sassel token on Windows, because it used to be the simple old way to do it, and they've completely changed everything because Microsoft. But back to OFTC. They're most famous because the Tor project was done on there. They're mainly on there for hosting open source free software projects. So there's a lot of operating systems on there, a lot of different networks, and all sorts of things where all of the developers of those projects are on OFTC. And the one thing I personally like about it is that their Tor and ClearNet are unified. So if you just put in the normal URL for OFTC, and it mostly comes built in with a lot of these IRC clients, and you double click on it and you run it, you'll connect. If you have Tor running, like with the Tor browser open or using the terminal to run it, and you put in the .onion, you go and you do the same ClearNet, it will sense that you're running Tor, and if you configured your client to Tor, you know, the different, the SOC 5 and everything, it will auto-connect to the Tor instance through the ClearNet URL. So they made it super simple. The URL goes to the same place, depending on if you just have it configured, your IRC is configured for the ClearNet, or configured for Tor, with Tor running somewhere in the background. So I find that impressive. Again, all of these have their ups and downs. I would say for FTC, again, it's more project-oriented, and while we do work on some projects as DCG 201, we're kind of more of just some fuckhead group from New Jersey that lies around, and all we talk about is dicks. So that's kind of what we're doing here. But that's going to be the choices. Unfortunately, due to the situation right now, which I'm going to get into now, we are not voting. We were going to do an official vote on this today and make up our minds. We're not doing it today. We're going to figure out when to do it officially in the future, because we're hoping for this meeting for all of our members to be together in one place. That didn't happen. We don't know if that's going to be like in a week from now, or our next meeting, which you're going to probably see my calendar here, which is fine. Our next meeting is on September 17th. So I will say this, up until the 17th, somewhere between now and the 17th, including on the 17th, we're going to officially vote on this. And that's going to be one of our things. We're also supposed to see a fun movie during this meeting, because we've decided that because we have this amazing screen, that we were going to air movies that we could not obviously stream on Twitch for people to show up in person. And we were going to air Johnny Mnemonic, I'm going to get into in 1 second of why we didn't meet, and then I'll try to check into the SEMP call, and we'll see how everything goes. Oh boy, everything's flaring up. But I will say that we already know most of our plans of what our next meeting is going to be. And for all those who are really excited to watch Johnny Mnemonic and all of its not aged well glory with a very young Keanu Reeves, we are going to air that again, provided there's no mishaps in the future at Subculture in person. So don't worry, come by next meeting, we got you covered. So let me go to Facecam real quick, and I'll explain kind of what happened today. So that's all like the kind of the good news. We're voting on things. We have a new logo. We have a ton of exciting projects. Let's switch over to Facecam and get rid of display capture for a moment. Which one I can say right now, you may have seen the hint about it, and we're still building this, but this is something that's going to happen. We just need to work out all the details to get a bunch of confirmation, which is why this is going to be like half vague, but here we go. On October, let me double check. I believe it's the 8th. Yeah, on October 8th, the night of October 8th, because I'm going to set up to this personally myself the night of the 7th. And then I'm going to prepare for it all day that Friday. And then October 8th, sometime in the afternoon, I don't know what time, maybe like 7 p.m., 8 p.m., something. Don't quote me on that, but it's going to be in the afternoon. Boom, we're going to do this. An extremely popular video game is going to come out called Metroid Fusion. I'm a huge Metroid fan. I'm in general a huge Nintendo fan, but I'm a huge Metroid fan. If you don't know what Metroid is, you have Wikipedia and YouTube. Go type in Metroid and look it up. The sequel here called Metroid Dread, that's going to come out on the 8th, the night of the 7th. So midnight, when it goes from 7 to 8, that's when it comes out. Oh boy, now my nose is running. Oh boy. I need to go catch it. That's going to be a huge release. I'm personally excited for it as a video gamer, but I don't know if anyone remembers last year when we tried to do Cyberpunk 2077. Even though we knew going into it, because we had insider sources letting us know how much the game run poorly and it sucks, we saw an obligation, we tried it anyhow, and it was the most hilarious UV ultraviolet colored disaster we've ever streamed. It was absolutely hilarious, despite all the frustrations going on. We're going to do that again because we know the Nintendo Switch easily streams through our capture card on here. And we're going to make sure to do all the tests before that. There should be no absolute issues whatsoever. So on the 8th in the afternoon, you're going to watch me live stream Metroid Dread. It's going to be my first time playing the game. You're going to get to see my raw reactions. But that's not it. We're not just being like Twitch streamers here, okay? We're hackers. So how does this relate to hacking? And, you know, privacy and security and all the stuff that we stand for at DCG 201. And I promise I'm going to get into what's going on. We, DCG 201, are going to, and we don't have a final confirmation yet of the exact people and organizations, so this is where it's going to get vague. We're going to invite individuals and people who are part of various organizations about speaking on being stalked and surveilled by technology, whether it's in person, like with security cameras, with AI tracking systems and stuff, or AI bots online that either track everything that you do or make fake accounts and follow you, and things like Apple's new policy where they're trying to get rid of CP in the name of destroying everyone's privacy on every Apple product available, and things like that. So that's what we're going to do. Is I'm going to be playing Metroid Dread, because in Metroid Dread there's these robots called Emmys, and they run around and they stalk her, and they're indestructible, so you have to hide and run away. And I can't think of a better theming that while I'm trying to run away from these giant killer robots I can't kill, and I have to be like Monty Python and run away. That we have various people on from some organizations that I'm going to ask, but you can probably think off the top of your head what might be involved. I can't confirm or deny any of them, but we are reaching out to a bunch of them, talking about real life and online surveillance and how maybe even they've been surveilled and stalked, and what people can do to either get resources, outreach, or prevent those things. So we figured people will come in to see one of the live streamers, especially a computer hacker, playing Metroid Dread for the first time and just the raw reaction from that, and learn in the process all the horrors of the current internet, policy-wise, programming-wise, etc., when it comes to stalking and online and surveillance with technology, I should say. And that's going to be a fun day. So that's going to be on October 8th. Stay tuned. We're going to announce that probably sometime in the middle of September, like probably before our meeting in September on the 17th. So just stay tuned for that. Now, let me get into, well, I've been coughing all this time. Well, I've been wearing a mask. You probably put the two and two together, but we at DCG 201 want to be really honest and transparent with what we do as an organization and what's going on with us. So as you may have seen on some of the tweets and Instagrams and even our website, we couldn't update the blog yet. We're going to do some updates. We might even make a post about this soon, but I'm going to give you the short story, and then I'm going to tell you the long story of this because I want to clarify a bunch of things. So if it hasn't been obvious, perfect timing. On Sunday, I unfortunately caught the Delta variant of COVID-19. Okay, that's as our co-founder talks. Which every time he coughs, it scares me because I've been isolating for like the past couple of days. Let me go into details what happened because we've been taking all of these precautions. We've been wearing masks out to events. We've been trying to social distance. As far as I know, most, if not all, of our members. Don't quote me on this, but I know a bunch of them are vaccinated. Like, what happened? So let me explain. So you can DM us, or you can privately, if you're on Instagram, DM me about this. I actually just made a post on my own personal Instagram right now. And what's happened is, it's funny of that because I'm actually opening this right now. What's happened is that I attended an event on Sunday. You can probably guess what it is if you followed our Twitter. Where we were doing community outreach to another organization. Not only we want to help them because it's the right thing to do, but they are particularly part of a minority group that is being brutally tracked, censored, stalked, and harassed on the internet. And we wanted to show, hey, we just want to give you a bunch of free open source easy to use resources to prevent as much as possible getting hacked, to preserve more of your privacy than normal. We had guides of how to lock down your Android phone and your iOS, and they're like really simply done. We made a whole blog, which I can show when we go back to the display mode, about, and I can actually post a link in chat, about, we called it the DCG 201 Hacking Guide for Sex Work, and it has a bunch of different things from programs on your phone to, there's the link in chat, to, alternative revenue services. We actually listed Just for Fans as an alternative to OnlyFans, and then literally today they announced that OnlyFans possibly, or in some degree, it's not 100% confirmed, but it really made it out there, might be kicking off most of or a chunk of their adult content. So we're really glad we posted that alternative service Just for Fans, among other things, on there, because it's very timely right now, right? So, we went to this event at a certain venue, and again, I'm not going to name any names. If you want to know, you can see my public tweet on my personal profiles, my side pocket, look me up. We also have me linked in a bunch of different posts on our social media. You can DM us, and if you are in New York, I'll give you a hint. If you're in the Brooklyn area and you want to be oh crap, I want to make sure I don't go there this week because I don't know what's going on, I want to be safe, just let us know. And we're not also dissing the organization that ran the event or the venue hosting it. We're just listing of what happened. So, as was mentioned at the event, they couldn't guarantee the vaccination safe thing after 10 p.m. I showed up at 11:30 p.m. and I stayed there till 1, basically, doing all of this. And it was a great time, and I talked to some amazing people, got to help a ton of people out. So I also went back to, oh, cool. Thank you, Yusuf KK0822. Thank you for following us on DLive. I don't know if our counter bumped up, but that might mean we might have just hit our 100 follower goal, which in that case, we actually might be able to upgrade our account so we can do a lot more with DLive. So I'm going to double check because right now the counter is kind of slow and updating as the instant reward comes up. But if you did follow us, please stay followed to us because even if we're still at 99, thank you, every follow counts. And if we hit 100, especially if we go over 100, but if we hit 100 because of you, thank you so much, Yusef KK A 0822. I have a feeling that was, oh, sorry, Karakaya. Did I just accidentally say the KKK? I did. Again, I have Delta. I'm sick. But thank you for that, because if I check our DLive account, we'll do a special shout out to you on our social media, including on wines.com and DLive itself for that. Thank you so much. Please stay subscribed. It's completely for free. There's other awesome content. But let's go back to the original story. And there was no one at the door to check vaccinations, like they warned about. The venue didn't have one. The organization didn't have one. After 10 p.m., I might say. And then I went back to that venue for a completely different event because I left my shirt there. I went to get it back, and because one of my friends was performing at this venue, and a bunch of my other friends showed up, I was like, shit, I'll just stay Tuesday night. So I did. And by the way, both events, while there were parts where I did not have my mask on, I wore my mask most of the time. And I tried to social distance as best as possible because the venue is very narrow and tiny. I also want to clarify, this was not a hacker event, and this was not a hacker space or a hacker venue. This was something completely unrelated. So, again, Sunday, went to this place. Tuesday, I went to this place. Wednesday afternoon, I started developing, like, flu symptoms. Just very mild ones. You know, I felt weak, my nose was running, I was coughing. There was one symptom that was odd that I've never had during the flu or a cold. I had a hard time breathing. And it wasn't like I was full of phlegm and I couldn't breathe. I felt like I couldn't breathe like I ran a marathon, which I've done before. And I was like, this is not the flu. Oh, crap. So I was talking to people online about my condition, and certain people reached out to me individually that I met from that event after 11:30, and they talked about how it apparently came out privately, allegedly, that someone showed up and they found out a day later they tested positive for Delta. So they were patient zero and brought in. Nobody knows who it is. And I went to them. Oh my God, we do have 100 followers on DLive. Oh my God, thank you so much, Yusuf Kara K0822 for finally getting us to our $100 follower DLive goal. Thank you so much. Please stay followed to us for just a little bit longer. We're totally gonna upgrade our account. If I was less sick, I'd be a lot more animated and excited. But you actually made my night happy because I've had a sucky day today. We technically all at DCG 1 had a sucky day today. So thank you for making our day really awesome, Yusef. Thank you for following us. Anyhow, back to the story. Because I really want to celebrate you, this is important. So someone showed up on Sunday. I don't know if they had a fake vax card or they were asymptomatic and they didn't know. It doesn't matter. They showed up. They had Delta. And a bunch of people have been testing positive for Delta and getting really sick, which is scary because some of the people there I knew, and some of those people I know are immunocompromised. So this is horrifying, right? And we're like over halfway done with the story. Again, I didn't know, and I didn't have any symptoms until Wednesday afternoon. Like, I had a COVID test before Sunday, very near where Sunday was, negative. So I came in with nothing, came away with the worst prize in existence. So, consolation prize, I should say. So the next day, on Wednesday morning, sorry, not Wednesday morning, on Thursday morning, so yesterday, I found part of oh man, did it just drop down again? Someone unfollowed. Okay, well, we're going to get there. We're very close anyhow. So, regardless. See, this is the type of day I've been having. Yesterday morning, I found part of an old COVID-19 test. Like an at-home test you could take. I got it back in April when I was originally just sick with the flu. I got COVID tested. It was negative, so I confirmed that I had the flu, and I got over that. You know, normal flu, fever, and nasal run, and me being stoned out of my mind because of the fever and stuff like that. Took that, came back positive. But it's an old test. So I didn't want this to be a false positive and go on no information. So right after that, I went down to my local clinic and I got a lab test. And, well, it's more like a lab test. And, where they literally face hook your nose. And they do it in 24 hours, and it's free, you don't even need insurance. And they get back to you the next day. Well, today's the next day. And a couple, 2 hours before we live stream, got my results back. This is a recent lab result, I'm positive. Now, the good news is that yesterday I had severe, well, not severe, mid-range symptoms. I had a fever of 102. I was really weak. I was dehydrated. I've had worse fevers than that, but I thought I was going to die. Delta is no joke. But the good thing is that outside of slight runny nose and cough, and I'm going to actually take my temperature on air in a moment when we go to the chat if anyone's in the SEMF call. As a reminder, I'm going to post the SEMF call link again. Hold on a second here. Join us. I have no symptoms. I can completely breathe fine, as you can hear. I just cough occasionally and my nose is a little runny. My temperature has been the normal 97 to 98 degrees. It has not gone up. I don't feel hot. I don't have any malaise anymore. I'm not fatigued. I'm active. I can walk around and do stuff. It's just, I'm positive with Delta, so I don't know how contagious I am. Now, when I looked up stuff, they say if you think you have any variant of COVID-19, you should isolate for 14 days. Sorry, not isolate, quarantine for 14 days. They say if you have it, and don't judge this, I'm not a doctor, I'm not an MD, even though I have 3 years of medical experience that I'm not going to dox myself with, but this is just what I found, and I'm still doing research on this. So this is just what I know so far. I'm still working on it. Apparently, if you have a positive result, you can confirm that once your symptoms go away and you take the test and it's negative again, you're fine. Regardless, I'm going to isolate like what I've been doing since Wednesday night for 5 days. So probably around Tuesday, Wednesday, and go take the test again. Even if it comes back negative, I'm going to be doing more research. If it finds out I have to isolate for longer, I will. And I might just, even though if they say you are completely fine, I still might continue to isolate myself for basically the rest of the month, which ruins all my plans today, this weekend, and the rest of the month. So yay. We also had a couple of bad things. First of all, shout out and condolences to Subculture. That's our meeting spot. I was so busy trying to inform everyone about my condition and make sure everyone can test early and get safe that I knew and I was in contact with, that I didn't notice that we got a message from them, and they tried to warn us in advance that they had an emergency, so unfortunately they had to make a very difficult decision to close early. And that they offered, we're open tomorrow, we're open in the future. We already know your meeting is next month on the 15th. We already have that marked down in our calendars, and we're going to gung-ho as that as possible. And they profusely apologized to us. So, unfortunately, our hybrid meetup became another online meetup literally at the last minute. And we already plan to do an online stream, which is why we're doing this right now. So, between me having Delta, but getting along with it, essentially, kicking out the bad neighbor, and our venue having to close down unexpectedly for tonight during our meeting due to stuff I don't want to say because I don't like to dox people or organizations. We've not been having a great day. But we're here with you. Paul's talk was awesome. I'm glad to be streaming with everyone. I'm glad to be way better than I was yesterday. If our meeting was last night, Jack would be on here doing this and I'd be dead. Again, I've been isolating. He recently took a test that came back negative. We're going to keep up on this. That's also why, even if this had a physical component still to it, I was not there. I'm doing this here. I'm wiping all this stuff down afterwards and immediately isolating again. I wasn't gonna, even if I showed up, I was not gonna bring any lockpicking. They wouldn't have take lockpicking with me because even though I haven't touched my main lockpicking stuff and I plan not to, for the most part, and even after all of this, I'm gonna re-disinfect everything again. Hell, I might even get an at-home test and scrub some of the locks down and do the at-home test just to see what happens. So we are taking precautions over this. We're going to keep everyone updated. I hope everyone appreciates that. Now, we're trying to be as accurate as possible, which is why we waited for the lab result for me to come in before we announced it, because we didn't want to say, oh my God, COVID, and then it's like, oh, turned out he just farted wrong, false hope, you can still show up. We didn't want to be like that, but we also did not want to be like, oh no, this is going to make us in the venue look bad and how he got in and stuff look bad, so we need to like censor, hide. So we had to find the balance of the two. So right when we got 100% confirmation, and we reached out to a lot of members and attendees privately, including our venue, about this. So as soon as we found out. So once we had 100% confirmed, we've made this public on everything. We've posted something similar on our Instagram. We're going to do more. I'm going to reshare my private thing on our Instagram. We posted on Twitter as soon as we got the confirmation for it, and all of that. I will say that because it's so far away, by our next meeting, unless something stupid happens with me again, I should be okay. And if because of this, you don't want to show up physically for our September meeting, it's still going to be a hybrid. There's still going to be stuff online. We don't blame you, okay? Like, if you have symptoms or you're too nervous about going and you're like, just make the simple decision and stay home, okay? We'd rather have, like, a good meeting where everyone's vaccinated and social distancing, but only have, like, 2 or 3 people to show up than to have, like, 80 people show up and one of us has COVID-19 even if we didn't know, and then everyone's screwed, you know? Again, we take our biological security as an organization and even as individuals the same way we do our computer security. So, sorry if that sounded super morbid. I just wanted to clarify what's going on. That's why I'm wearing this mask provided by the city, which there's a fun story about that, but I can tell you in person. I'm not going to say it online. I want to explain why I've been coughing a lot. And again, I hope everyone appreciates how transparent we've been. Don't worry about me. I've been feeling better. I'm pretty sure. I wouldn't be surprised if in 2 days from now, knowing my own biology, because I have a really weird, awesome immune system, I should probably be fine with everything. But I'm also not going to count my chickens before they hatch. So using the scientific process, we will see. So anyhow, that was all the heavy stuff. I'm going to quickly check to see if there's anyone at all in our subcall chat. We're going to pop in for like a couple of minutes, see if anyone wants to talk, and if no one wants to talk, that's fine. We'll throw some lemons along everyone's way, and then we're going to go raid a stream when this is all done. Anyhow, so here we go. We're going to go back to the screen mode, and I'm going to display capture share. So everything is going to be weird again. Here we go. Here's the MCP scanning us into the Tron world. All right. I'm going to mute everything. I'm going to unmute myself. Hello, everyone in the chats. Does anyone want to say anything that is not completely stupid on our stream? Anyone at all? What's in the public chat? Okay. Murph apparently can only type, not right now, that's fine. If you only want to talk in the chat, I can relay what you're saying. Nice to see you, Murph. I don't know if we recognize you or not, but I hope you're doing good. I hope you're way safer than I am. I want to remind everyone that we've been always recommending, all the precautions. Again, we made a guide way back last March on how to safely protect yourself from COVID-19, as well as what it was and what you as a hacker from home, whether it's entertainment, education, charity, whatever, can give back. So I just, again, want to reiterate that I took as many of those precautions as possible. Unfortunately, just due to the perfect storm of stuff happening, of just basically stupidity to some degree. Part of it's me, part of it's other people, and I'm not judging anyone either. I got infected and everyone else got infected. And again, I'm pretty much over all the main symptoms now, just some sniffles and coughing. There's no fever. I can breathe fine. That's why I'm yapping all this time. So everything works. Which again, if I was unvaccinated, just a note about Delta, it's really goddamn vicious. If you're vaccinated and you get infected, you get mild symptoms 72 hours or more. I have what's called a hyperactive immune system. Long story short, I'm basically Wolverine, but I don't get like a sexy ripped body, and I don't have claws that shoot out of my hands, but I have realistically everything else, including the long hair, which is actually part of that. Basically, I heal wounds faster. Everything on my body, from my nails to my hair and other things hanging off of me, grow faster and longer. Wink, wink. And I can get sick. I do get sick. It's not that I don't get sick, but I tend to defeat diseases and produce antibodies for them extremely fast. So instead of 72 plus hours of symptoms, I basically have defeated all the main symptoms in under 24 hours. Which yay for me. And that is in help to the vaccine. If I was unvaccinated people, Delta particularly targets people between 20 years old to 40 years old. If you're unvaccinated, you get hit with Delta. Imagine normal COVID hitting an 80-year-old person with type 1 diabetes. You are going to the hospital. Like, most of the cases have been like these 22, 32, 28-year-old people who are healthy and jog all day and are like vegans and stuff, and dead. Like, literally dead. Heart attack, dead within 10 hours. So, like, you know, your political opinion, which is odd that this is even political, because that's like saying, like, oh man, like, this firewall is really political. It's like, no, protect your computer. Like, come on. But that's up to you. But we, as hackers who want our physical security, our biological security, like our network and computer security, get vaccinated, especially if you're young, because with Delta, you are going to die. And I'll tell you this, even I was vaccinated, and I got mild to mid symptoms, and it felt like I was going to die. So I'm telling you, this is not fun. I don't know if I'll post it on our profile, but you can actually see on my personal stuff. If you want to see a photo of me going through the 102 fever, check it out. I look like King Tut found mummified. Right. You know, because that's something I wonder. Let me check chat. That's fine, Murph. You don't even have to chat. I'm just asking in the SEMP call, and we're still trying to work out the SEMP call stuff. So we'll probably do a better job of it next month, because again, a lot of stuff came in the way. But yeah, there's part of me that wonders, because I'll put it this way: when I got the immunization, first of all, I went down to the FEMA Center in Newark. Thank you, Murphy, for that. I wish New York did that. Freaking Excelsior, what the hell is that? Isn't Excelsior from like Marvel Comics? Like, get the hell out of here. So he actually did the right thing and was like, FEMA, treat this as if a 10.0 earthquake happened, save our state. So even though our state wasn't even in high-end trouble, he still reacted to that. So thank you, Murphy. Like, honestly, you know, Murphy, our governor, has his flaws. That's one of the many things I have to say thanks to you for real. And also, even though I couldn't get any at the time just because everything was logged in, honestly, particularly when it comes to testing, Jersey City has done a very good job. So also, thank you, Philip, for that. And this is, we're not aligned with the city or the state or anything. It's just, it's nice to know, as Swift on Security said, I wish I could bring up the tweet, but you can go look for it. They actually said we were like the only good state on the East Coast. So, and I've heard that sentiment from a lot of other states except for Florida. They're Florida. So it's just weird and nice to know that. But anyhow, when I got that, I had the reverse effect. Like, I went with friends of mine. They're also DCG 201 members that live in the area. And I asked, hey, let's social distance, come with me, and you'll see our pure imagination. No, please come with me with your mask, social distance with me. Because even after they do the isolation for 15 minutes, they don't want to get on the PATH train, go through with, like, vaccine symptoms, because this is not unique to COVID. Anyone can get vaccine symptoms. It doesn't mean you shouldn't get it. Just make sure they should, if it's a proper vaccination thing, put you on watch for 15 minutes exactly, and always go with someone just in case for some reason if you do have symptoms, even if they're super mild, they happen later in the day, and monitor yourself. This applies to any vaccine. You can get it for measles, mumps, flu shots. That happens with any vaccine, okay? It's not some weird, oh my God, they're putting mercury in there or something. That's just the truth, because basically human bodies are worse than the first version of Ubuntu, okay? They're worse than any Slackware variant. They're worse than OS2 Warp, okay? We literally have not had a system update in at least 100,000 years. So yeah, we're still running back on when we used to eat our dead. That's our brain. Our brain is barely out of alpha. So just put that in mind. The reason I'm saying this is that when I got my vaccines both times, especially the first time, I was waiting for a reaction. And despite the first one, a little bit of pain, it's like aftershock from the needle. I didn't even feel the needle both times. And also, which is a good thing about when you get vaccinated, here's a tip. If you get vaccinated or any form of medication, fun thing, we still are studying a lot of sleep. Remember, I'm not an MD, but this is research that I've done. This has also helped people because I read a lot of scientific journals, like actual scientific journals, not some like weird, My Pillow news site or something, or like CNN or some like weird, or like Goop or whatever. But when you sleep, part of your sleep is how like when Windows or Ubuntu or Debian or something needs to shut down so that it can do certain major kernel updates, right? When you're asleep, that's what your body does. It basically, you don't go unconscious. That's actually a misnomer. It's like the same way you don't see things, you see light bouncing off of things. And you know what? I'm just going to switch to face mode, then I'll double check it again. Right now, having fun talks with you, and dead serious. If anyone has any comments in the chat, I'd love to talk, as you can tell, especially now that I can breathe. And I will have to blow my nose in a moment, so you're going to hear that. Actually, I'm sorry. I'm not going to go away, just because I want you to know how serious this is, even though I've gone most of the system. I'm going to blow my nose now. So give me 1 second. You're going to hear all this lovely stuff, and I'm going to go wash my hair. Here we go. Oh, my God. Oh. And I have washed my hands, and I'm going to disinfect the general air later. Fun tidbit about washing your hands. Not that anyone's stupid, but a lot of people don't know about this because our education system is worse than any shithole country we have. It's literally based on Prussia from the 1800s, in which they wanted worker drones, not students. So not viable members of society. They wanted ants, essentially, that were human. But quick fact about washing your hands, from someone who's had to wash my hands in a lab environment often. Cover your hands completely with antibacterial soap. You rub back and forth on your palms to make sure that the soap gets under your nails, and you also do the wrist. Now, if you were doing surgery, you do your entire arm, but do your wrist, okay? And then when you go and rinse them off, sing out loud if you want, but in your head, I'm a little teapot. By the time you're done with that song, you have done the max amount of time to wash your hands and they're completely sanitary. Then dry your hands. Ideally, dry with paper towels and throw it in a receptacle. Try to avoid air dry blowers as much as possible unless they're your only option. Because as a Mythbusters episode showed, and actual scientific research showed, while it's hands-free, it blows all the germs and grime on your hands everywhere, on the wall, on yourself, and the people around you. It's like flushing a toilet with the lid open, or just everywhere. So you actually spread the disease more, and you get more sick. So just as a note. Also, fun tip: in most bathrooms, use the stall closest to you, because most people avoid the first stall and they go to the last stall. So in most cases, the first stall in the public bathroom, or at least the first two, are the most clean. Fun, huh? Anyhow, back to the story. So I got vaccinated both times. I had the opposite effect. First time, I'll put it this way. First time I went, I hate to dox him, I went with N Commander, okay? You know how awesome he is, and he does all those He tortures himself on his YouTube, and he used to be on for Hackall and Commander. We're hoping to have him back in December, provided Delta and I must have said Libra. Ooh, that's a brain cell. Lambda stays in its lane. We what do you call it? I was with him, and he was tired of the weather. And 2 hours after the shot, I was more awake and healthy than he was. He didn't even back to everything. He was just under the weather. Like, the running joke going to my second shot is Searso was like, watch, you get the second shot, you're going to get superpowers. Like, they're going to inject you, and you'll be able to fly or shoot lasers out of your pee hole or whatever. And the second shot was the same way. I didn't even feel it. I felt great. I went and ate Subway sandwiches. It was freaking awesome. And I still waited like 7+ days to make sure I got through everything and stuff like that. So I wasn't like, oh, I got boost backs, and I'm like humping everyone's public furniture or something. It was just that. But I do have to wonder if, besides, did my hyperactive immune system take it really well? In the same way how, to be honest, that Delta is essentially a coked up version of COVID-19, and it fought it off under 24 hours when most people had symptoms for more than 3 days. Or, I remember I had a hard time breathing the first week of January before they even reported a case in the United States, to the point where I was actually sent home 3 minutes early from my work. So I sometimes wonder, did I contract it then, was sick for barely a day, and I was already like herd immune because of it, and then the vaccine. By the way, if you do get sick again, get the vaccine. You'll actually literally double your security. Okay, that's the equivalent of like having uBlock in your browser with a firewall, or like having like an encrypted messaging service in a VM. Okay, like, you know, you can use the encrypted messaging service, but if you have it in a VM and you're running like Zen or something as your hypervisor, you're now better than the person who just runs the secure messaging system. And it works. And it's the same way. So if you have been sick with COVID or Delta in my case, because I was actually looking into the booster program before all this happened, and you get it, you're like double secure now. And again, we're doing more research on this, and the scientific community is doing more research on this. And as soon as we at our organization finds out, you've probably seen some of our retweets and Instagrams, we are going to share such information. Because again, this affects all hackers, not just in our group, but other DCG groups around the world, in our country. Some of these hackers are neighbors, some of these hackers are friends, some of them are roommates, some of them are lovers, partners, people who owe us money, things like that. So, sorry for rambling. Basically, long story short, got the Delta variant of COVID despite taking precautions. I have, why did I have this stuff on anyway? I apparently got contact by it for whoever showed up positive with Delta on Sunday night at a event in New York City, particularly Brooklyn. If you want to know the venue, if you're worried about going to places in Brooklyn, just DM us and we'll be able to tell. Because again, we don't want to knock the organization that ran it and the venue that hosted it. We're still during a plague despite post-vaccination, especially with Delta and Lambda out there. That's sort of the risk. So we're not angry at anyone. We're not trying to ascribe blame. We're just trying to figure this whole out because, you know, I went through hell. This scares me. This scares Jack. This scares a bunch of us, you know. And a lot of us are vaccinated. So this is, that's why we're taking, and that's the thing. I'm better now. I've been taking precautions. All of us at DCG 201 have been taking precautions. We're going to continue to take precautions. I'll put it this way. If Delta gets worse, we unfortunately will switch back to virtual again because we're already live streaming most of this stuff anyhow. It's just in person. We also have an in-person element to it, which we're originally going to do, like, as we were supposed to do today, like exclusive in-person speakers, movies, we weren't able to do. And we still are going to try to do a hybrid event next month, but we're just saying we take this so seriously that as much as we want to come back and meet all of you folks, we're hackers. We take all this stuff seriously. We take security seriously, whether it's a computer, a lock, a living organism, a sex toy, a webcam, a printer, even though fuck printers, because they're evil. We take all of this seriously, and as we repeatedly say in our events and at our events and online and on our website, We do not want to inconvenience anybody, and we don't want to put any of our members at risk. This is why we always say, if you have an important personal thing and it happens to be during our meeting, go to that. We have meetings every month, even if they're just live streamed online. This will always happen third Friday of the month. And even if it doesn't happen, like what happened in, I believe, June, we'll still do something next month. We have all these type of shows. We have social media presence. We have all these different ways to interact. So, again, I got Delta. I'm better now. I'm still contagious. I'm still isolating. I'm taking precautions. Jags are taking precautions. We've been all taking precautions here at DCG1. We're going to monitor the situation, still update on things. We still plan to meet on the 17th next month as a hybrid meeting, but we'll see how that goes. We're still doing everything, most of our stuff online, even if we do some in-person stuff. And what else? Delta is a thing, and I can tell you from personal experience, it is not fun at all. It is not. It is just, whoo. I'll put it this way. I would rather build Electron in Joe on Debian than to go through what I went through yesterday again. Okay? I'm not serious. I would rather recode Temple OS from scratch in Java than to go through what I went through yesterday. I'm dead serious about this. I'm laughing because I'm nervous and that whole thing was horrifying, even though I was vaccinated, even though I know I was going to get through it and did go through it. So, still wear masks in public, still social distance, get tested. Try to get tested at least once a week, but just get tested whenever you can. There's also home kits now if you can afford it. Around here, they're like $26. And in Jersey City, there's a lot of places to get tested, and most of them are free and don't ask for insurance. Try to go to your state's website if they have listings. If your state doesn't have it, and you want to do a road trip or a public transit trip as safely as possible, find the state nearest you that does that and go for it. You know, because trust me, this is not fun. And outside of certain people who used to owe the government, Trump. That was a real cough, by the way. I actually have some phlegm that I get to do this amazing thing on air, and then, yeah. Because I'm trying to remove all phlegm here, I'm going to disinfect the surface and wash my hands and everything and wipe down the mouse and stuff. I didn't touch any of the liquid parts. But yeah, what was I saying before? Besides certain people that I'm not going to name that I may have accidentally coughed earlier, I really don't, and one of them already went through this and was still an asshole. I would not wish this on anyone. And in fact, there's a couple of people that I don't like in general personally, like not the hacker world in my personal life, where if I could warn them and I've tried, I would, because I don't wish them to go through this no matter how much they piss me off. So yeah, that's that. I'm sorry this is kind of a long-winded thing. This affected me personally, and I want to make clear how serious not only myself, but Jack, all of our members, Ciricel, Neo, Squirtle, I believe Night Owl's a member, I'm not sure, and Commander, and everyone else, how much we all take this seriously. Not, DEF CON groups did not tell us to do this. We're not dissing them, they just didn't. This was our own initiative, and this was also my personal initiative to let everyone know once I had 100% conclusive results, because I'd rather you all be well informed as soon as we know, and have you guys and gals and packets and stuff, and hackers and crackers, not that type of cracker, but some old term, don't even have, way older than the even older term for it. But I'd rather have you all know the situation for real, that we have complete proof for it, and that we're honest and transparent, and you are now nervous and taking precautions, than lying to you all and pretending everything is okay, and I'm blue, la da dee da dee da, and then everything goes fucked. In computer terms, so many open source projects in particular have died the worst dumpster fire deaths that way. Freenode tried to hide all their bullshit. Look at what happened to them. Another organization that I'm not going to name, that you should already know that we don't like, had done stuff like that, and look at how most people distrust them anymore. Brave browser, that happened to them. We're not going to lie and bullshit anyone who's a member of DCG 201 or anyone that attends our stuff. Like, you don't have to be a member. That's why we're announcing this publicly, because, like, I'll put it this way. Let's say we're at Subculture, and we find out 2 days later that someone was sick at Subculture, right? First of all, knowing Subculture, they'd freak out. Like what they did when they had to shut down today for emergency stuff. They would. That's not why they shut down, by the way. This is a hypothetical example. They would tell us immediately, like they've done in the past with other mishaps that have unfortunately happened to them. We thank them immediately that they immediately told us, and then we publicize all of them. So, like, even if it was like 2 days later, like it was at a separate day at a separate time, it was not our event at our time, we would still let everyone know what happened at our venue, because again, we'd rather have people take precautions and be safe than to, like, everyone wondering why they got sick after they came to our event, and then us, like, staring down, twiddling our thumbs. We don't want to be Enron, okay? DCG 201 is not Enron. So yeah, that's it. I'm gonna quickly check back into the call again, the public chat here. Let's see. Physical security has many aspects. Yes, Murph. That's good. I'm gonna. You are all still unmuted. So as I switch back to turn on desktop audio, is anyone not shy and want to comment on Big Blue Button, or should we just end this here? It's almost 9 o'clock, so this is a decent time anyhow. Jack, do you want to say anything to our viewers, good or bad? Are you working on anything? Anybody? I don't know if you're typing something or you're doing voice, but if you're doing voice, we can't hear you. I'm actually going to assume that he's probably talking back in...
Nope, nothing to report.
Okay. Jack is apparently disassembling Grand Stream HT802. Our condolences. Apparently, we're also doing some BS with Electron, which is like saying ATM machine. All I could have just said was Electron. We know BS comes with that, but dead serious. That's all you have to say. I think we're going to end the meeting here, and we'll come back at another time. So, as we go back to my face, and turn off the desktop audio, thank you, everyone. And by the way, in the Sev call, no one can hear you now, just like in space, no one can hear you scream. Thank you, everyone, for watching, attending, and interacting with our live stream. I really wanted to meet you all in person, but a combination of me getting the Delta variant due to factors out of my control, even though I tried all sorts of precautions, I'm doing even more precautions now to make sure people don't get sick. And the fact that, unfortunately, the venue had to close early for non-COVID, not COVID-related reasons, okay? Completely different emergency that I don't want to dox them on. This ended up dropping down from a hybrid to an online. But that's why we do the online, because we'd rather have the meeting done. Don't worry, there was an earthquake. I accidentally hit our desk. We'd rather have these meetings and give you all something to go in and interact on and get cool talks that now we can expand on around the world. That's why I hope next meeting's a hybrid, because we get to do local cool people and cool international people that can't visit here. Oh boy. Again, I'm perfectly fine. I can breathe and stuff. It's just that I'm glad I've been coughing up phlegm. That means I'm near the end of this. But what was I saying before? We'd rather do this than to do nothing at all. It really hurted us in June when truly everything, tech-wise, scheduling-wise, things in every DCG 201 member's personal lives fell apart, and we couldn't do June, even though we did the rest of our live stream. So that's going to be it for the meeting. Thank you all for watching and following. Again, if you want to know when we're going to be live streaming, and we're going to be live streaming a lot more after today. Again, I already announced we're doing a special on October 8th, and there'll be more stuff to come. You can follow us on Twitch, DLive, or YouTube. And we had 100 followers on DLive. Someone decided to unadd themselves. So if you are on DLive, or DLive, however you call it, we're one more follower away where you can properly upgrade our account. So just follow us. It's free on DLive. Just sit there for a week, and we're going to upgrade our account, and we can do a lot more with it. And trust me, on DLive, if you like what you see, you're going to be really happy. Regardless, If you like us, go follow us on there. As you saw, we got notifications. We will say on YouTube, make sure to hit that bell and turn on all notifications because YouTube freaking algorithm sucks. Okay, but that's our meeting. If you are on Twitch, we're gonna go raid whatever stream's going on right now at almost 9 p.m. If you're on D Live, we're gonna try to throw out some lemons out there, which is kind of like the little reward system D Live has. It's very similar to bits on Twitch, if you know that. Thank you. If you want to know more about us, including our next meeting on September 17th, as well as that on Sunday at p.m., I'm doing Master of Unlocking shortly after this stream. You're going to see the post for that, and you don't want to miss it. Master of Unlocking at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sunday, right on Twitch, D Live, YouTube, and everything else we're on, because it's really going to be awesome. It's actually a episode I've been wanting to do for a while off my bucket list. And because a certain product was on sale, I managed to get it. So yeah. But if you want to know about that, thank you, Robin A. I don't know if you've already followed us, but if you do follow us on D Live and you stay followed for us by at least a week, you get to upgrade our account on D Live and stay here for like 5 minutes. We're gonna dump a bunch of lemons. So if you're the only one on here, you're gonna get a bunch of lemons. So stay tuned, okay? So I'm gonna wrap this up now. So Twitch, stay tuned. We're gonna raid. D Live, we're gonna go do lemons. If you're on YouTube, I'm sorry, but you do get to save the episode afterward and rewatch it. If you want to know more about us, you can find us at our website at defcon21.org. If you are want to hang out with us on our Twitter at defcon21nj and defcon21 on Instagram, on GitHub, on hostducks.social mastodon, all of that. Here's the link tree for all of those. And what was I going to say? I'm going to cough. I'm going to try not to die after the stream. I'm really good now, by the way. I'm not faking all this. I am really good. I'm just trying to make sure not to spread germs around. And, yeah, on Sunday, this Sunday is going to be Master of Unlocking at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And stay tuned for more announcements of various live streams we're going to do. And hopefully on September 17th at Subculture, we're going to have a proper hybrid meeting, the one we were supposed to do today. Anyhow, that's all. Thank you, Paul, for doing your amazing talk on Hypercore. I hope that project goes well for you. Please reach out to him if you want to know stuff. Hack the Planet. Dirty Jersey represents. And remember, whatever your political opinion is, either stay home or wear masks in public, social distance, be safe. Because I did most of those things, and I went to an event where the perfect storm of stupid happened, including points where I took my mask off. So that's my fault. And I got Delta, and Delta is not fun. Delta is how do I describe it? Delta is the building a blockchain from scratch. Building a blockchain in the Scratch programming language levels of fucking annoying, okay? So just try not to get it. Get tested. Vax immediately, because it's not fun. You can go to my personal profiles and see how I look like I was dead. So please don't. Anyhow, be safe out there. Hack the planet. Say hi to the person we raid. And if you're on D-Live, stay tuned for all the lemons. Peace, everybody. Enjoy the music.
Now we borrowed every track. Now we borrowed every track. Now we borrowed every track. Now we borrowed every. Now we borrowed every. Now we borrowed every. Now we borrowed every track. I'm a monster. Now we borrowed every track. Now we borrowed every track. Now we borrowed every track.